Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Pirates. I have 300 heroes heritage. Chapter 81. Zan Yu glanced at Nami with a worried look on his pretty face, and said confidently and proudly. Kuina is the first rider of the Dark Moon that I have named me. Even if I get 12 riders in the future and start the re-ranking battle, I still believe that her strength will be able to maintain the position of the first rider. It's not like someone who will fall directly from the second ride to the tail, and may even fall out of the Dark Moon 12 riders sequence, then someone will be embarrassed. After all, there is someone who doesn't even know the hockey of the New World, which is a personal weapon, and Conqueror's hockey is just a little bit of fur. Nami listened to Zan Yu's yin and yang peculiarities, and turned around to talk about herself, and she couldn't help but puff up, but this time she did not directly refute Zan Yu. Imagining the scene in the future that Zan Yu said, Nami couldn't help shivering, then looked at Zan Yu with a smile on his face, and then said, "Brother Zan Yu, you call it armament hockey's cultivation, and Conqueror's hockey's promotion, okay? Is it okay? Is it okay?" Seeing Nami, who suddenly pulled his sleeves and started babbling, Zan Yu instantly felt goosebumps all over his body, and couldn't help but feel a little regret in his heart. It's time for Kuina to tell Nami. Afterwards, Zan Yu quickly agreed to Nami's request, and Nami released Zan Yu with a triumphant smile on his pretty face. Zan Yu also breathed a sigh of relief, and once again turned his eyes to the two who had almost mobilized their momentum on the top of the mountain, and continued the previous topic, saying, "I don't know what level Hawkeye's swordsmanship has reached, but Kuina's swordsmanship surpassed the limit of a great swordsman 3 years ago. In addition, speaking of the saber, the meat in Kuina's hand is Zanpakuto, and it is still a strong and alien among Zanpakuto. It is far from being comparable to the rubbish of the Supreme Sword. In terms of quality and level, even the current cold is far from Kadu." Zan Yu's words made Nami stunned, especially when he heard Zan Li's praise for the saber meat in Kuina's hands. Nami was even more stunned. It turns out that the purple saber that Sister Kuina has been holding is actually so powerful. Nami was sighing when he heard a shout from the crowd in the distance. "Look!" The two of them started. In an instant, everyone's eyes stared straight at the direction of the top of the mountain. Into the eye is a blue and a purple, two swords up to 100 meters high from the eagle eye, and Kuina in the hands of the knife slashed towards the other side. The two collided quickly. After a while of buzzing, the two sword chi dissipated at the same time. The first time the two played against each other was on the same level. It was amazing. Kuina also deserves the title of Wushwang Zhanji. No wonder Lu Cipher Zan Yu has the guts to say that he will form a divine organization. If the future 10 knights including the Thunder Spirit Nami have this kind of power, who else will be their opponents in this sea? Without knowledge, such power is exaggerated and invincible. This is just a mutual test between Hawkeye and Kuina. What? How is this possible? There is so much power just to try. While everyone was still talking, Hawkeye and Kuina on the top of the mountain each swung a slash again. But this time, the power is more than 10 times that of the previous one. The pirates, who didn't believe that the fight between the two just now was just a test, lost their voices instantly when they saw this scene. And a pirate who knew that they were testing each other for a long time was also full of shock, and disbelief. With such a blow, are they really still swordsmen at the level of great swordsmen? Could the great swordsman really be able to slash this 1,000-meter high slash? These two, just when everyone was shocked, the two slashes collided again. Buzz, a buzzing sound that was dozens of times sharper than before suddenly sounded. However, this time, after the two sword chi collided, the purple-black sword chi was finally broken and cyan sword chi, and quickly slashed towards the eagle eye. Seeing this, Hawkeye's eyes narrowed slightly, and he avoided this slash sideways. The purple-black slash crossed the eagle eye and slashed directly towards the continuous mountains behind the eagle eye. Humph! Seeing a flash of sword light, dozens of tall mountain peaks were directly cut off, and the tops of the mountains began to slide down. Boom! Hawkeye didn't look back at the apocalypse-like scene behind him. His sharp eyes pointed directly at the girl in front of him, saying, "I didn't expect that you have already stepped out of the level of a great swordsman and entered a new realm. You deserve it. However, I am at least 50% sure that I can draw you." Hearing this, Kuina also said, "I didn't expect that you, who is known as the world's greatest swordsman, has actually stepped over that hurdle and entered the same realm as me. However, for the new realm, your understanding is deeper than yours. But my own kendo path is not as mature as yours. Therefore, I also have a 50% chance of not being able to beat you. The words of Kuina and Hawkeye were listened to by the people who were always paying attention to this place. They were even more surprised, but at the same time, they also created a lot of doubts. These two people, the swordsmanship of these two people, Goodly How, has surpassed the level of a great swordsman. Could it be that the great swordsman is not the end of the swordsman? Is there a more powerful realm there? As a swordsman, I really want to stand on their level and witness the new world of the swordsman. Did Hawkeye lose the fight just now? Did I see it wrong? Kudos. It's true that Yingyan lost, but listening to the conversation between the two, Yingyan seems to have a 50% chance of winning the battle with Kuina. What's the matter? Also, what they said belongs to their own swordsmanship. Road, what is it? Hey, Hawkeye has only a 50% chance of a draw, which means that he can't defeat Wushwangji and Kuina at all. It seems that the throne of the world's largest swordsman is really going to change hands. Hey, this time I'm so sure that Kuina wins. This time I won. Nami also heard the conversation between Hawkeye and Kuina, turned his head curiously to Zan Yu next to him, and asked. Hey, Zan Yu, why is Kuina's sister's / even stronger than that Hawkeye, but there is still a 50% chance that she will be able to tie with Hawkeye? Zan Yu didn't tease Nami this time either. He looked at Kuina and Hawkeye, who started to fight again on the top of the mountain, and explained. This is the so-called problem of your own swordsmanship. However, you are not a swordsman. You may not understand some things I say, so let me be straightforward. The real reason for a swordsman's strength is the realm of strength, and it is to forge his own swordsmanship. And Kuina is also the inheritor, and she inherits a powerful woman who claims to have learned all the swordsmanship genres in the world, known as Kendo, 8,000 streams, and Kuina's swordsmanship is inherited from her, and she has been and learned all the swordsmanship of this heritage hero and her Kendo. A heritage hero who has learned the world's swordsmanship, her swordsmanship is so many and complicated, one can imagine. Therefore, Kuina has been learning these swordsmanships all these years. It was not until shortly before we went to see that Kuina mastered all the swordsmanships. Therefore, in terms of swordsmanship and realm, Kuina has long surpassed the realm of the great swordsman. However, for a swordsman to be truly powerful, it is more important to follow his own kendo, because only one's own kendo can fully exert one's own strength. Remember that since you met Kuina, did she often sit with her eyes closed? That's Kuina building her own kendo. Or rather, he is making up for his swordsmanship. And Hawkeye is different. His swordsmanship and realm have come out step by step, so he has been cultivating his own swordsmanship since the beginning. It is precisely because of this that he has been ranked first in the world at such an age. The throne of the great swordsman. No one knows how terrifying a world's #1 swordsman who can fully exert his own strength. Therefore, even if Kuina's realm far surpasses Hawkeye's, there is still a 50% chance of a draw. After listening to Zan Yu's explanation, Nami nodded thoughtfully. And while Zan Yu was speaking, the battle between Kuina and Hawkeye became more and more violent, and it was faintly shaking the ground. At this moment, I saw Hawkeye suddenly holding a knife in both hands in a strange posture, and then suddenly waved the knife and shouted, "Night Black Knife Slash." Seeing this, Kuina was also unwilling to be outdone, took a step forward, got up with a knife, and shouted, 8,000 streams, stroke the knife and cut. It takes time, and countless dazzling swords collide wildly. At this moment, the entire earth turned into a rag, and it was in a state of dilapidation. Even the mountains in the distance were directly cut into small clods by the splashing sword energy, and rolled down from the sky. And among the people watching this battle from a distance, there are also many unlucky people who were directly affected by the sword energy and died on the spot. Seeing this scene, countless onlookers were shocked, and hurriedly retreated further away with a look of horror. No one wants to lose their lives here just to watch a duel in World War I. Quick, rewind. The fools in the back don't hurry to go far away, wait for you to die. What the hell is going on with these two people? With such destructive power, are they really human? Can a swordsman really do this? It's unbelievable. With the strength shown by these two, they can even challenge Marine Admiral Kuina is worthy of the God Organization, the first rider of the Dark Moon 12 riders. Her strength is so terrifying that it makes people desperate. The naked man in the cowboy hat in front of you, won't you get out of the way yourself? Ace in the crowd heard someone calling him a naked man. He pointed at him in disbelief, as if to confirm that the other party was talking about himself. Ahoff. He was clearly wearing pants. Ace was about to go up and have a theory with the guy who called him naked man, but he was snatched away apologetically by the Lost and others the next moment. Zhan Yu waved his hand and formed a blood-red crystal-clear ice curtain directly in front of himself and Nami, blocking the sword energy splashing from the opposite side. Ace glanced, and a smile appeared in the corner of his eyes. This guy is also very interesting. Afterwards, Zhan Yu seemed to have thought of something, and the smile on his face grew even stronger. This change in Zhan Yu's expression was naturally caught in Nami's eyes. Nami couldn't help shivering in his heart, and secretly said, I don't know that the unlucky guy is being targeted by Zhan Yu, so let's mourn for him in advance. When Nami was thinking this way, he suddenly heard Zhan Yu cough lightly beside him, and then heard, Hey, interesting, it seems that Kuina has gained a lot in this battle. Hearing this, Nami couldn't help looking curiously at the two fighting at the top of the mountain, and at the same time he couldn't help but ask Zhan Yu. What's the matter? Did you find anything? Seeing Kuina's swordsmanship becoming more and more coherent and smooth, and the power of swordsmanship becoming more and more powerful, Zhan Yu's eyes flashed with relief, and then replied to Nami. Didn't you notice that Kuina's sword is stronger? She is now in that battle to sharpen her swordsmanship. If this trend continues, it won't take too much time, and the 50% of Hawkeye's final draw may disappear completely. In other words, if Hawkeye doesn't take any further action, Kuina can say that this duel has been won. The problems Zhan Yu was able to discover here, the Eagle Eye who was the one who fought personally, naturally discovered it long ago. Hawkeye secretly said in his heart, no, if you drag it on, you will really lose completely. Thinking of this, the eagle's eyes widened, like an eagle about to catch its prey, and slashed Kuina, who was bullying, with a sharp knife, and said loudly, I'm about to use my strongest move, you, be careful. Standing still, Kuina heard the words, a pity flashed in her beautiful eyes, but then she became serious, looked at Hawkeye and said, if that's the case, let's use the last move to decide the outcome. After speaking, the two nodded in tacit agreement, and then suddenly all their own momentum was disturbed. At this moment, the wind stopped, the clouds stopped, everything seemed to become silent. The pirates who had almost retreated to the foot of the mountain were staring at the two people on the top of the mountain with scorching eyes. Everyone knows that the next move will be a brilliant confrontation between two swordsmen who have surpassed the realm of great swordsmen. At the same time, it is also the most dazzling collision in the history of the world's largest swordsman competition. At this moment, everyone present was extremely grateful that they were fortunate enough to witness this historic moment. As time passed, the atmosphere on the mountaintop battlefield became more and more solemn. Gouda. At this time, among the crowd watching the battlefield on the top of the mountain, I don't know who suddenly swallowed a mouthful of saliva. In this tense situation where all things are silent, everyone is focused and staring at the battlefield, this swallowing saliva is like a big rock falling on the lake, instantly causing many people to turn their heads directly, staring angrily at the one who makes the sound. On the top of the mountain, Hawkeye and Kuina seemed to be receiving a signal, and the sword energy erupted all over their bodies at the same time. Yi, kill the god with a knife. 8,000 streams, Shinigami Forbidden style. The two on the battlefield shouted at the same time, and instantly attacked each other. The people watching the battle below had an intuition before their eyes, and then they saw that the knives in the hands of Hawkeye and Kuina had been slashed together fiercely. Before everyone could react, there were bursts of roars, and the sound of breaking suddenly sounded. Crack, crack, crack. Boom, boom, boom. At this moment, everyone just felt that the earth was shaking. It was as if the end was coming. At this moment, a terrified shout suddenly exploded in the crowd. Quick, look, the sky was torn apart by the aftermath of the battle between the two of them. Everyone kept their voices warm and subconsciously looked towards the battlefield where Hawkeye and Kuina were fighting on the top of the mountain. It was at this sight that everyone instantly felt that the souls of the dead were coming. The legs trembled. A cold sweat rose directly from the soles of the feet and went straight to the back of the head. Everyone saw Hawkeye and Kuina's head, and an obvious black crack appeared. Mysterious, dark, deep, and vast. Even through the cracks, you can see the starlight shining in the darkness on the opposite side. If that's all, they wouldn't be so rude. The main reason is that from the feet of the two, a crack suddenly appeared on the ground, and this is spreading in all directions at a very fast speed. And under each cracked mouth on the ground, it seemed like a giant beast was tearing apart, and it turned into a bottomless ravine in a very short time. There is even a faint fire in the ravine, and sparks are emerging. This is the real doomsday catastrophe. Hey, run, the island will be ready soon. Quick, quick, get back to the boat. It's just two monsters. At this moment, everyone panicked and ran frantically towards the seaside ships. Even the Marines who were planning to ambush and catch the pirates were mixed in the marine at this time, and they frantically moved towards the shore one by one. Run away. At this moment, there is only one thought in all Marines' mind. Nonsense justice. I just want to live now. Yes, after seeing the devastating power of the enemy they wanted to capture, almost all the Marines were scared to death. To capture a possible enemy that you have no chance of defeating at all is to die. Among the crowd, the Spade Pirates are also frantically running towards the shore. Ace, who was running away, couldn't help but look back at Kuina, who was on the top of the mountain, and then looked at Zanyu and Nami, who remained on the spot and looked at the battlefield. Chunin couldn't stop mumbling. Is this the power to have without fear of marine, without fear of world government, or even challenging the status of celestial dragons? If I can also have such strength, then I will definitely become the freest person in the entire sea, right? At that time, my identity. Finally, taking a deep look at Zanyu, Ace turned his head and followed the gang of the Spades pirates and ran towards the pirates. On the side of the top of the mountain, Zanyu ignored the cracks in the ground and looked at the battlefield with a calm expression, when he suddenly found that the avatar of the heritage hero in the system flashed suddenly. Zanyu couldn't help but feel a little different. Following the guidance of the light of inheritance, his eyes quickly locked on the back of Ace, who was running away from the crowd at the foot of the mountain. This guy, it seems that some changes have taken place in his mentality just now. After murmuring softly, Zanyu's eyes retracted and he looked at the battlefield again. On the battlefield, with another click sound, the Black Knife Knight, the head of the supreme sword, was directly cut into two pieces by the meat in Kuina's hand under the gaze of several people present. Also at this moment, Ruka slashed directly across Hawkeye's chest, bringing up a bloody flower. Ignoring the changes in the surrounding environment, Kuina's cold face flashed a hint of joy. Her beautiful eyes looked at Hawkeye and said lightly, "I won." Hawkeye, on the other hand, ignored the bleeding wound in front of his chest, just looked at the black knife with only half of it in his hand with complicated eyes, and without much hesitation, he directly retracted the broken knife. Then he looked up at Kuina and suddenly laughed. "Ha ha ha, not bad. You won. The world's greatest swordsman, from now on, it's you. Wu Shuang Jian Kuina. From today onwards, my eagle eye, I will recognize your name of Wu Shuang." When it came to this point, there was no loss or pity on Hawkeye's face, only endless fighting intent, and he continued. "However, this doesn't mean that I, Dracule, Mahawk, will give up the title of the world's greatest swordsman. Waiting for my challenge in the future. The title of the world's greatest swordsman is on you for the time being. Don't lose it to someone else before I challenge it." After speaking, Hawkeye's face was instantly pale, and he fell straight down. Kuina looked at Hawkeye, who had passed out, and said softly, "No, neither you nor anyone else will be able to defeat me in the future. The throne of the world's greatest swordsman, I will not give it to anyone." At this time, the surrounding mountains began to collapse completely, and countless magma rose from the sky. Zanyu in the distance saw this scene and smiled. Afterwards, a group of Marines who had fled to the shore, the pirates heard an earth-shattering dragon roar from behind. On the endless sea, a pirate group pulled a warship and slowly moved forward on the sea. "Quick, quick, stop the bleeding. Scar, where's the bandage you fool got? Bangshi, stop touching him. Even if you touch him again, he is the man you can't get in your life." Ha ha ha. On the Spade Pirates, Ace glanced at Hawkeye, who had passed out and was being bandaged by his crew to stop the bleeding, then turned his head and looked helplessly at Zanyu, Kuina, Nami, who seemed to be sitting on his own boat, speechless. "Hey," I said, "why do big men like you come to my boat? Isn't the warship you grabbed right behind? Also, Eagle Eye is not when this Kuina big, 357 Ace gang," wanted to say, "Sister Kuina," and instantly felt two dazzling eyes staring directly at him, and the words he had not finished were swallowed instantly. All the hair on his body stood up, and then he changed his mouth immediately after an inspiration. "Is it cut by Miss Kuina? Why should we be responsible for the rescue?" Under the sun umbrella on the deck, Zanyu, who was sitting in the chair, heard Ace's roar. He couldn't help sitting up straight, looked at Ace with ruby red eyes, and said solemnly, "Although the Eagle Eye was cut by Kuina, whether it is Kuina or Nami, they are still pure girls. How can they bandage their bodies for other men before they get married? This will stain their hearts." On one side, Nami, who was also lying under the umbrella, lying on the reclining chair like a young lady, drinking a glass of orange juice in his hand, looked at Zanyu's serious nonsense and almost sprayed the juice he just drank into his mouth. "Come out." Even Kuina, who was leaning against the railing with Ruka, smiled when he heard Zanyu's words. As for Ace, his brows twitched fiercely for a few times, then he stared at Zanyu again and asked, "What about you? You, a big man, will not be stained by bandaging the Eagle's Eye, right?" Unexpectedly, after listening to Ace's words, Zanyu said directly and righteously, "Me, you asked me to bandage that guy. Did you make a mistake? I am offering a reward of 1.5 billion Baileys, the road cipher. Zanyu, known as the King of the Gods, how noble is his status? A mere Eagle Eye, is he qualified to let me bandage his wounds? Speaking of which, it seems that to show off hockey, even a little conqueror's hockey was released." Suddenly, the crew of the Spade Pirates who were still bandaging Hawkeye's wounds rolled their eyes and fainted. And when Ace felt this breath of oppression, a feeling of dissatisfaction and unwillingness surged up in his heart instantly. Next second, boom, a conqueror's hockey that was even more tyrannical than Nami's conqueror's hockey instantly burst out from Ace's body, vented frantically toward the surroundings, and crushed it away. However, apart from Ace, Zanyu, Kuina, and Nami were the only people who were awake on the boat at this time, so this explosion of Ace was useless. However, at this time Kuina and Nami looked directly at Ace. They didn't expect that the guy in front of him with a cowboy hat who was about their age was actually the owner of Conqueror's Hockey. No wonder Zanyu said that this guy is also an inheritor. The two women thought at the same time. And Zanyu's eyes lit up at the moment when Ace Conqueror's Hockey broke out. He was not surprised that Ace had Conqueror's Hockey, but was surprised that the mysterious heritage hero avatar flashed again in his mind. But then to Zanyu's disappointment, it only flashed once. "Maybe I can." Seemingly thinking of some interesting experiment, Zanyu suddenly smiled at Ace after he recovered. Kuina and Nami, who were always paying attention here, immediately mourned for Ace in their hearts after seeing Zanyu's familiar smile. They know that Zanyu is about to start his bad fun again. And Ace himself was obviously a little nervous because of Zanyu's smile. Before Ace could say anything, the intensity of the Conqueror's Hockey that erupted from Zanyu began to slowly increase. In an instant, Ace's complexion changed slightly, but he still gritted his teeth and held on. At this moment, he wanted to speak out loud about what Zanyu wanted to do. But the reality made him unable to open his mouth at all. Zanyu took another look at the avatar of the heritage hero in his mind, only to find that there was no movement this time. Some unwilling Zanyu continued to strengthen the strength of Conqueror's Hockey, and slowly a blue-gold light began to appear in the void, and there was even a faint thunder and lightning wandering in this blue-gold light. With a slight gas explosion, Ace's Conquerors was directly crushed by Zanyu's Conqueror's Hockey. At this moment, Ace's face was pale, and then they all looked at Zanyu and yelled, "What the hell are you doing?" In the face of Ace's roar, Zanyu put away Conqueror's Hockey, and then stared at Ace like this, his eyes twinkling with pity, anger and disdain. Then he said, "Hey, nothing." After speaking, Zanyu shook his head with a pity face, and let out a long sigh. "Hey." Ace was inexplicably unhappy at the sight of Zanyu, and said, "What's the matter with your expression?" "Hey." At this moment, Zan Yu suddenly looked at Ace with a serious look and said, Ace, what is your purpose of going to sea? 0.5. Ace looked at Zan Yu with a solemn expression at this time. The anger on his face gradually dissipated. He also looked at Zan Yu with a solemn expression and said solemnly, Me, naturally, to be the freest man in the whole sea. I want to live freer than anyone else. This is not only my dream, but also a promise I made with my other two younger brothers. Zan Yu heard the words, shook his head and smiled, and said with some regret, Ace, you haven't really recognized your heart yet. Being the freest person, is it One Piece? But, is the so-called One Piece really the freest person in this sea? Yeah, it doesn't seem to me. At least, the previous One Piece, Gol D. Roger is not. When Ace heard Zan Yu mention One Piece Gol D. Roger, his expression instantly froze. He wanted to know his opinion on Roger from this fierce mouth who dared to bluntly declare his rebellion against the whole world. However, when Zan Yu said that Roger is not the freest person in the whole sea, Ace's expression changed, and he looked at Zan Yu with some dissatisfaction and asked, Why do you say he is not the freest man in the sea? I know from the people I went out to see that he is a man who will truly realize his dream. Neither Marine's pursuit, the strange weather on the Grand Line, nor the obstruction of the four emperors have prevented a man from finding the legendary Raftel, and finally becoming the pirate king recognized by the sea. How could such a man not be the freest man in the sea? Zan Yu looked at Ace's unyielding expression mixed with a hint of anger, and just smiled, and then said, But, wasn't he finally defeated by a small illness and had no choice but to surrender to Marine? What? When Ace heard that Roger was not captured by Marine, but turned himself in, his face was full of astonishment. At this time, I heard Zan Yu continue. Ah, yes, he surrendered himself, even though he overturned the whole sea, even though he knew he was going to die, but in my opinion, it was just the last helpless roar of the king. That's it. At least, in my eyes, the man who was made the freest man on the sea by others didn't even have time to arrange the safety of his wife and unborn son in the end, so who is the freest man? However, Portgas de Rouge, she was an admirable mother and a true king's woman. A woman who was abruptly pregnant for 20 months in order to protect herself and Roger's son from being discovered by Marine, and finally died of understanding after giving birth to the child. I admire her. When Ace said, Portgas D like the name, there was a trace of sadness in his eyes, but what he reflected was a very horrified expression, looking at Zan Yu in disbelief, knowing that Zan after Yu's voice fell. Ace looked at this young man of his own age, and suddenly said vigilantly, You know my identity from the beginning. What's the purpose of you getting on my boat? Also, Deus, Mihal and the others were stunned by your conqueror's haki on purpose. What are you trying to say to me alone? Ace's voice fell, and Nami's words suddenly came over. Zan Yu claims to know everything. Zan Yu smiled, followed Nami's words, looked at Ace and continued. As Nami said, in this sea, as long as there is a little bit of famous people or things, I know something. As for the two questions behind you, in fact, it seems to me that it is the same question. Getting on your boat is naturally because you have the qualifications to become my Dark Moon 12 riders. As for stunning other people on your boat, you should not want your identity as the son of One Piece to be known by others. However, after getting on the boat, I suddenly discovered that you haven't really recognized your heart yet. Ace, you still need to continue to roam on the sea and see your heart clearly, and then, I will give you the strength that you should have to be the most free person. One Piece like your father is the freest person in the world. No, only those who have the power of gods and the power to shut up all beings are the freest people in this world. At this time, Ace was shocked by Zan Yu's words and his mouth widened. He looked at Zan Yu in disbelief and said, Are you saying that I also have the qualifications to become as tyrannical as you? Can I also become one of the 12 Knights of the Dark Moon? After seeing the power of directly sinking a giant island between Kuina and Hawkeye, Ace's idea of challenging the world's strongest man and taking Whitebeard's head to become famous in the world has been shaken a bit. The battle between the two great swordsmen can break out with such power, so how strong the monster known as the strongest man in the world is, Ace is somewhat unimaginable. To challenge such a man, with his current strength, there is no possibility of winning. And now, after hearing Zan Yu say that he also has the qualifications to be called a strong man like Kuina, Ace is ecstatic. However, this is Zan Yu looking at Ace with a face full of surprise, but splashing cold water. Although your qualifications are not bad, it's just a little bit better, don't be too complacent. The qualifications I'm talking about are the qualifications you have to join our Dark Moon 12 Riders, but that's also the qualifications that you can only have after you see your own heart. I will give you the strength to make you fast. Rising power, understand? That is to say, you are just a little brother we ordered now. Nami and Kuina on the side looked at Zan Yu, who was talking, and some of them were too lazy to complain. After listening to Zan Yu's words, Ace also calmed down and muttered. Only by seeing one's heart clearly, can one's aptitude be brought into full play. Afterwards, he looked at Zan Yu again, and said curiously. I just read in the newspapers before that the Dark Moon 12 Riders are an organization that you plan to form as powerful as gods, but what is the specific situation? Also, if I join you, will it really become as you said? A little brother. Will you interfere with my freedom? Zan Yu looked at Ace, who was able to calm down so quickly and regain his agile thinking, and nodded secretly in his heart. A glimmer of admiration flashed in his ruby-red eyes, and then repeated what the local said to Nami to Ace. Quote, Above, is the Dark Moon 12 Riders that I said to be formed. As for the question of freedom you speak of, we will not have any interference with your daily freedom, even if you join us, and then join other forces outside the world government and celestial dragons. We will not have any interference, but one thing, when the organization begins to collectively action, or when members of the organization ask for help, they must take action, that's all. Having said that, Zan Yu resumed his lazy posture and sat on the chair again, ignoring Ace, and said casually. Of course, the premise of the above is that you can recognize yourself and really join us, otherwise, it will be nothing for you. Ace spoke, rubbing his fists, looked at Zan Yu firmly, and announced loudly. I will definitely meet your requirements. The Dark Moon 12 Riders must have my place. Since the world thinks I'm the son of the devil, and everyone wants me to die, then I want to become a god and live more freely than all of them. I'm all happy. Zan Yu, who was sitting in the chair, heard Ace's declaration. A smile flashed in his eyes, then suddenly stood up and looked at Ace and said. Since you have such confidence, I don't recommend pointing you now. Saying that, Zan Yu turned his head to look at Nami, who was still lying on the reclining chair drinking orange juice, looking like a melon-eating crowd watching a good show. Nami, do you remember when you were watching Kuina and Hawkeye's duel before? What did you ask me to do? Hearing this, Nami's eyes lit up immediately, and he directly appeared in front of Zan Yu as a thunderbolt. His pretty face was full of excitement, and he looked at Zan Yu eagerly and said. Brother Zan Yu, are you going to call me Armament Hockey now? Zan Yu got goosebumps all over his body when he was called by Nami's brother Zan Yu. He subconsciously took 2 steps back, and then he coughed. Cough, Nami, don't fool around. After speaking, Zan Yu quickly turned his head, looked at Ace again, and said. As Nami just said, what I'm going to hand you is a skill. Strictly speaking, it can be regarded as a category of taijutsu, called armament hockey. Having said that, Zan Yu's expression also became serious, and he continued. Everyone is born with 2 types of hockey, the armed color and the knowledgeable color. As for the conquerors you have, there is only 1 in a million people. This is your own unique talent. And today, the first thing I want to teach you is armament hockey. Like the observation hockey, it is a hockey that can be cultivated and improved through acquired training. It is different from the innate conqueror's hockey. Those who have armament hockey can improve their personal defense and attack power, acting like invisible armor, can evolve into attack power, and then compete with demon fruit power, and can even touch the entity that is naturally fruit-like. Depending on the individual's style, the hockey bias of the specialization will vary. No matter what kind of hockey is, it will be like a person's strength. Hockey will be consumed, which is related to the time and intensity of use and the coverage area of hockey. The user can control the strength and display of the use according to the needs of the battle. Armament hockey takes time to recover after overuse. If some special moves need to cooperate with armament hockey in a wide range, and form a new move through the fusion of hockey and fruit, the strength and speed will be greatly improved, but this move uses hockey too much, it takes time to recover after use. The armament color is divided into entanglement and hardening. Of course, I will explain these in detail after you learn armament hockey. Having said this, Zhan Yu looked at Ace and said, "Speaking of which, Mr. Garp specializes in physique and two-color hockey, especially the combination of the ultimate armament hockey and that pair of fists. Basically it can be said that he has hit the whole sea." Nami, who had known armament hockey earlier, Ace who heard about this power for the first time was obviously surprised. At this time, Ace finally understood why the fist on the head hurt so much when he was taught by Garp as a child. At this time, Nami's eyes were shining brightly, and he looked at Zhan Yu and urged, "Then teach me quickly, I don't want to lose to the juniors who joined later in the position of Dark Moon's second rider." Saying that, Nami once again used his stunt against Zhan Yu and said coquettishly, "Is it all right, Zhan Yu Oni sauce?" Zhan Yu's mouth twitched, and he quickly told the two about armament hockey's training method. In the following days, on the entire Spade pirate ship, Ace and Nami spent each day practicing like this. Later, with the permission of Zhan Yu, Ace's crew also joined the practice. And Kuina also began to practice her own swordsmanship and hone her own way of kendo. On the whole ship, Zhan Yu was the only one who had nothing to do, drinking coffee and reading books all day long. It is worth mentioning that Hawkeye woke up the next day after being bandaged. After thanking everyone, he asked for a small boat and left with a broken knife on his back. As time passed, the Spade pirates dragged their warships on the Grand Line. Except for buying some supplies on a few islands on the way, everyone except Zhan Yu was concentrating on practicing. During this process, Zhan Yu saw that Ace and the others had mastered the basics of master armament hockey, and then told Ace and his group about the cultivation method of observation hockey. Everyone in the Spade Pirates was surprised again, but they already knew that their boss would definitely join the Dark Moon 12 Riders organization formed by Zhan Yu in the future. Zhan Yu would almost be their boss in the future. For the abilities taught by the boss, they did not have any excuses and accepted them all directly. In the blink of an eye, more than a month has passed. And Zhan Yu and his party have come to Alabasta, a place known as the Desert Country. Zhan Yu, Nami, and Kuina got off the boat and set foot on the shore, turning to look at the Ace group who waved goodbye to them. "Hey, are you really not going to Alabasta with us? Are you going to the New World alone to challenge Whitebeard?" Standing next to Zhan Yu, Nami shouted at Ace on the boat. Yes, since Ace has learned armament hockey and observation hockey a little, the idea of challenging Whitebeard that was extinguished before and becoming famous in the whole sea has appeared again. I have to say, this is really Ace. Ace listened to Nami's shouting and laughed. "Don't worry, this time I go to sea, I will definitely be famous in the whole sea, and then I will be able to officially join the Dark Moon 12 ride. But at that time, Senior Nami should be careful. If I replace you as the second rider of the Dark Moon, good Li Jiao, Senior Nami, don't blame me." Ha ha ha. Nami looked at the laughing Ace, and immediately cursed loudly, "Go to hell. You want to be the second rider? Let's talk about it when you become a Dark Moon Knight first." After finishing speaking, Nami turned his head and stopped looking at this ignorant guy. And Zhan Yu looked at Ace who was determined to challenge Whitebeard, thought about it, and said, "Since you have decided, then I will not stop you. However, before I leave, I'll tell you one more life-saving skill. It is specially designed to cooperate with those who have the ability of the Logia fruit. If it does not encounter special restraint, there is almost no ability to solve it." As soon as Nami heard the words, he immediately turned his head with bright eyes and looked at Zhan Yu with a longing look on his face. "You know, she is also a Logia-capable user, and she is also a Logia-capable user without the weakness of Devil Fruit." Ace, who was standing on the boat, heard the words, and his eyes lit up. The contacts in the past month have made Ace deeply understand what terrifying strength this man standing on the shore possesses. How can a move that can be described by such a big man as almost incomprehensible be weak? Just then, Ace heard Zhan Yu's voice coming from below. The Logia fruit person can evade ordinary attacks by elementalization, but when facing the attack of armament hockey and seastone weapons, this ability will be lost. However, before the attack of the weapon covered by armament hockey or seastone hits the body, you can elementalize the attacked body part in advance, so that some fatal attacks that do not escape in time can lose the attack effect. This also means that you have to refine observation haki. Only with advanced observation haki can you have this trick perfectly. After speaking, Zan Yu also had a smile on his face, waved at Ace and the others, and said, "Okay, that's done, then, see you in the future. I hope that at that time, you can really join the Dark Moon 12 Riders, become a member of it, and take the gift that belongs to you from me at goodbye." After speaking, Zan Yu turned around and walked towards the port of Alabasta in the distance. Seeing this, Nami and Kuina also waved at Ace and the others, then turned around and followed. Ace on the pirate ship looked at the backs of Zan Yu and the three of them, waving his hands and shouting, "Goodbye, brother Zan Yu." After finishing speaking, Ace turned around and shouted at all the crew members of the Spade Pirates with a smile on his face. "Okay, guys, it's time to start our own journey. Target, New World 4 Emperors. Kill Whitebeard and let brother Zan Yu and the others take a good look. Our Spade Pirates are also very powerful. Then when joining the Dark Moon 12 Riders, it's best to grab the second ride from Miss Nami's hands." Ha ha ha. Looking at the high-spirited Ace, the crew members also shouted to open the sails and continue to start a new voyage. After all, Alabasta is one of the few countries with a large population in the world. In addition, due to the fact that the world government is a member country, Marine established a marine branch base near the kingdom to protect the tranquility of Alabasta and deter some vicious pirates. Therefore, in Alabasta, even if there are pirates who want to enter the supply, they will put away the pirate ship in advance, and then enter the country after dressing up and concealing their identity. In the past, due to the pirate flag, Ace and others could not openly drive the pirate ship into the Alabasta port. Zan Yu and the three could only disembark at the beach far away and walked towards Alabasta step by step. Nami, who was following Zan Yu, looked at Zan Yu with a puzzled expression, and suddenly said, "Zan Yu, have you been hiding something from me and sister Kuina recently? Why do you see so many smiles on your face recently than usual? Especially after just disembarking, I found that your expression was very wrong. Say, why does it have to be in this Alabasta? Is there any secret here? Could it be treasure?" Speaking of which, Nami's eyes magically turned into Bailey's symbols in an instant. Kuina on the side looked at Nami like this, and couldn't help but want to cover her face. As for Zan Yu, he turned around directly and gave Nami's smooth forehead a shudder. Then he laughed. "There is a secret here, but this secret is not treasure. It is about a very powerful weapon." After speaking, Zan Yu changed his voice and said, "Of course, this so-called weapon has nothing to do with my happiness. I am happy that, here, I bumped into 3 inheritors at one time." While speaking, Zan Yu's mind was staring at the heads of the 3 heritage heroes shining brightly in his mind, and 2 of them were even more dazzling to the ultimate level, almost as much as when Nami first awakened. And even which one is left, it's just a little dimmer than when Zan Yu first discovered Nami. When Kuina and Nami heard Zan Yu's words, a look of surprise appeared on their faces at the same time. Actually, found 3 at a time. Kuina stepped up to Zan Yu, looked at Zan Yu and said, How well do they fit with their heritage heroes?" Nami also ran forward happily at this time, his eyes doubled. "Yeah, what's the matter? Don't be like that guy Ace again, there is no sign of awakening for a month." Zan Yu looked at the 2 women and smiled, then turned his head, his eyes looked in the direction of the light of inheritance that only he could see in his eyes. Looking at the Alabasta King City ahead, he smiled and said, "Don't worry, come on, the 3 of them have a very good fit this time, and 2 of them may be able to wake up directly after meeting each other." Hearing this, Kuina's eyes flashed with surprise. Before she went to sea, she had heard Zan Yu say that as long as he found 5 inheritors, Zan Yu would be able to awaken another heritage hero. Although Kuina knew that Zan Yu was already very powerful at this time, who would despise her beloved becoming stronger? And Nami is just happy for the new members to join. Then what are you waiting for? Let's go. Finally, the right members have joined. I was no longer the bottom at that time. Humph. With that said, Nami trotted directly towards the approaching port of Wangcheng. Zan Yu and Kuina met and smiled, then followed. More than 10 minutes later, inside a majestic manor in the king city of Alabasta. In a tall, empty hall with all the sunlight sealed by the Black Emperor, a middle-aged man wearing a black coat, a snug black suit, and a big back was holding a cigar in his mouth. Looking at the lively town below from the gaps in the curtains, a trace of playfulness and disdain flashed in his eyes. And on his left arm, inlaid with a big golden hook, he is one of the 7 warlords of the sea, Kralotl. At the same time, in this kingdom, he gradually acquired another name. Hero, Crocodile. Hum. Stupid people, cheer up and enjoy the last moment of happiness. Soon, my perfect plan will be able to be implemented, and then you will never be so happy again. However, as long as I can get the Pluton battleship, then it will all be worth it, and then I will thank you for your ignoring help. Hum. Crocodile's low laughter suddenly echoed in the hall. At this moment, the sound of high heels stepping on the ground came in from outside. Ha. Hearing the footsteps coming from behind, Crocodile stopped laughing and said without looking back, "Miss All Sunday, what happened?" Crocodile's voice fell. "I saw a tall woman wearing a white cowboy hat and a slender white coat walking out of the shadow under the stone pillars in the main hall with high heels. She is Nico Robin, the current vice president of the Baroque Society, and the secretary of the Crocodile, responsible for connecting with other Baroque Society members. Boss, according to the news from the eyeliner below, Lucifer Zon Yu brought his first Dark Moon Rider Kuina and Dark Moon second Rider Nami into the royal city. What action should we take?" Hearing this, Crocodile's expression froze, and when he turned around, he looked at Robin with a dignified expression, and opened his mouth to confirm. "Are you sure it's those 3 guys?" Robin looked at Crocodile's dignified expression and didn't feel any surprise. After all, a month ago, the first rider of the Dark Moon, Kuina, the Peerless Sword, fought against the world's largest swordsman, Eagle Eye, on Whiskey Peak. The throne of the greatest swordsman. At the same time, Hawkeye himself admitted the name of Kuina Wushwang. This matter has been uploaded all over the sea. This is the only time everyone really realizes the weight of the Dark Moon Knight. If Zon Yu first announced that he would become the king of the gods 2 months ago, and formed the Dark Moon 12 Riders, an organization of gods above all living beings, everyone except those top forces in the sea thought Zon Yu, Kuina, and Nami are just a bunch of arrogant people. But now, everyone has slowly started to recognize this divine organization. After all, Hawkeye is one of the most powerful characters recognized by the sea. All such characters were defeated by Kuina, the first rider, and fell to the ground with serious injuries, which shows Kuina's strength. Even those who do not believe that Kuina has the strength of a great swordsman on weekdays have shut up this time. Of course, this is just Kuina's record. If everyone knows that Zon Yu has defeated Shanks, one of the 4 emperors, they don't know how shocked they will be. Looking at the dignified Crocodile, Robin folded his arms and leaned on the stone pillars of the main hall behind him, and said plainly, "Intelligence is true. As for our plan, all the preparations are in place, and now it's time to start implementing it. How about, do we still follow the original plan?" After Crocodile's face changed for a while, he seemed to have thought of something, and then he smiled and said in a low voice, "Why not? You must know that this is a desert kingdom, and here, I am an invincible existence." As he spoke, a sly smile flashed in Crocodile's eyes, and said, "Say, well, since they're getting in the way of our plan, it's time to get rid of them. Didn't we just get word the other day that someone saw the Admiral of Headquarters Aokiji in the nearby waters? Send someone to tell Marine about the whereabouts of Zon Yu and the 3, and they will come back to chase out Zon Yu's group for us." Having said that, Crocodile glanced at Nico Robin, who was a little embarrassed after hearing Admiral Aokiji, and still said in his characteristic deep voice, "Don't worry, I won't send you. You are my right man after all. To realize my dream, I must get your help. I'm not going to do the thankless stupidity of letting Marine hunt you down and interfere with my perfect plan. Okay, let's go down and make arrangements." After Nico Robin heard Crocodile's assurance and instructions, he breathed a sigh of relief and replied, "Yes, boss." Immediately afterwards, he turned around and walked towards the outside of the hall. Crocodile looked at Nico Robin's back gradually walking away, a disdainful smile flashed on the corner of his mouth, and secretly said, Hey, just put my swing down, don't beat and beat, you won't really do things for me, son of the devil, Nico Robin. Although, I only believe in my own strength, not anyone else." At the same time, on Kingdom Street, in a relatively famous restaurant. All the ordinary people, the little pirates, were sitting at the table at this time, and even though there was a whole table of delicious food in front of them, their bodies did not dare to move. Looking at the front of the bar with pale faces, 3 men, 2 women, 3 backs were eating the food placed by the chef's trembling hands. How did these 3 big men come to Alabasta? I shouldn't have eaten here today. Lu Cipher Zan Yu. The first ride, Wushwang Jian Ji Kuina. The second ride, Nami the Thunder Spirit. They have come to Alabasta without a sound. Look at the world's largest swordsman from a month ago after the competition, they have been on their way here. This country is going to be lively. Nami opened his heart and listened to the thoughts of a group of people, especially when he heard someone calling himself a big man. In his heart, Nami's big eyes jumped with laughter. Afterwards, Nami turned to look at Zan Yu while eating the food in front of him, and said curiously, Zan Yu, why don't we want to wrap ourselves up in a robe this time like we did in Whiskey Peak last time? Don't you really hate trouble? Zan Yu heard the words, put down the knife and fork gracefully, wiped his mouth, looked at Nami and smiled. If this is not the case, how can we lead to our goal? You already know the identities of the 3 targets this time. Hearing Zan Yu's words, Kuina reacted instantly, looked at Zan Yu curiously and said. Zan Yu nodded, his ruby red eyes suddenly flashed with a mysterious meaning, and said. Good. Alabasta, there are only a few qualified people, and now, the first one is already on the way, so I can guess the identity of the remaining 2 who are staying together. Nami rolled his eyes. Zan Yu said. You're still so rambunctious, really. While speaking, Nami directly opened the hard net. She became curious about the identity of this upcoming new inheritor, and Kuina on the other side also launched observation hockey at this time, and began to scan the entire street. 360, hey, it's actually a girl. There was no disguise in the conversation between the 3, and their voices were completely transmitted into this quiet restaurant where needles could be heard. In the ears of every diners. Everyone is tight in their hearts, and secretly said in their hearts. It turned out that, the 3 of you came here to find someone. It's good to hear that these 3 people don't attack ordinary people, otherwise the kingdom will be in danger. Humph, a daring and reckless person, as a wanted criminal, he dares to appear in the capital above all. Don't you know that we, Alabasta, are a member of the world government? When is the hero crocodile coming? The quiet and eerie atmosphere lasted for more than 10 minutes while the 3 of Zan Yu were talking casually and the other diners were worried. Coming. At this time, the ordinary diners who were already restless suddenly heard Zan Yu's voice in front of them, and they couldn't help but froze for a moment. Coming. What is coming? Who is coming? Just when such a cute new question appeared in everyone's mind, they suddenly heard footsteps appearing, and the man couldn't help turning his head to look at the door of the hotel. I happened to see a woman wearing a long white dress, a pink shawl, and long aqua blue hair appear panting at the door of the hotel. And beside her, there was also a stupid-looking Daru duck. Princess Vivi. How could Princess Vivi be here? It's bad now. No way. We must not let Princess Wei be hurt. When they saw that it was Princess Vivi, everyone's expressions changed. There were even quite a few people who just gritted their teeth and stood up, shouting towards Wei Wei at the door. Princess Vivi, you go. Don't come in. There is danger here. While shouting, many people directly gritted their teeth and stood up, blocked the aisle with their own bodies, formed a human wall, and looked at the backs of the 3 people sitting on the front bar with resolute faces. It seems that if the 3 Zan Yu dare to hurt their princess, they will be as desperate as the 3 Zan Yu. Aware of the movements of the crowd behind Dao, Zan Yu's mouth twitched slightly. Nami, on the other hand, heard the decisive beliefs through the hard network, and for a while, he couldn't help but miss the villagers of Kokoyashi village. In the beginning, they did this for their own sake. And Kuina nodded secretly in her heart and said, it seems that the Lord Kun and the princess of this country are very popular among the people, and these people are not like the disgusting guys they met on the merchant ship. The people here, so cute. This is a wonderful country. Kuina finally commented in her heart. At this time, Vivi at the gate looked at a group of people who sacrificed their lives to block the aisle in order to let him leave. While he was worried, he was also grateful. Everyone, it's all right, I'm just here to chat with Mr. Zan Yu, Miss Kuina and Miss Nami, you don't need to do this. Go back quickly, it's alright. I'm treating myself to dinner today. Everyone, go home, don't really make Mr. Zan Yu and the others angry. Go back quickly. Wei Wei trotted in, and while persuading, without giving others a chance to refute at all, he directly pushed the group out of the aisle out of the restaurant. And the rest of the pirates watched this group of civilians being pushed away, and it was fine, and they couldn't help but mix in the crowd and left. Suddenly, only Princess Vivi, who was slightly panting, was left in the entire restaurant. Daru Duck, who was like a goose with a dumb head, ran fast, Zan Yu, 3 people sitting in front of the bar, and the only ordinary chef. Looking at the people who had all left, Vivi, who was slightly out of breath, breathed a sigh of relief, then turned around, looked at the backs of Zan Yu and the 3 of them, took a deep breath, and then walked slowly away past. Coming to the front of the bar, Vivi looked at the chef with big good-looking eyes comfortingly, and a warm smile rose on her pretty face, and said, "Mr. Chef, please bring me some food, thank you." Perhaps Vivi's smile has a magical power. After seeing Vivi's smile, the chef, whose hands were trembling all the time, miraculously gradually recovered his mind, and even spoke for the first time, saying, "Princess Vivi, please sit down for a while, wait a moment, and the food will be prepared for you right away." After speaking, the chef really showed his craftsmanship as a restaurant chef. After a meal, the whole bar was fragrant. Smelling the pungent aroma, and looking at the food that had cooled down on her plate, Nami couldn't help pouting, dissatisfied. "Hey, Mr. Chef, isn't that too partial? Obviously it is possible to make more delicious food, but it is only made for us, and the fragrance is even half the fragrance of the food that the princess has not finished. Will we not give you money?" Saying that, Nami cut off the cute pink orange-shaped purse around his waist and placed it on the bar. After thinking about it, he finally took out a bill with a denomination of 100,000 Bailey and slapped it on the bar. "Pay the bill." Then he hurriedly put away his small wallet, as if he was afraid that someone would rob him. On the other side, Kuina looked at Nami's small movements and couldn't help laughing out loud. "Nami, you're still so greedy for money. Didn't you take care of Bailey that we snatched from the buggy ship? Why do you care so much about this little money?" Even Zan Yu was amused by Nami's stingy appearance. Vivi looked at the scene in front of him, and a hint of surprise flashed in his beautiful big eyes. Whether it's Zan Yu who smiles softly, Kuina who is kind like a big sister, or Nami who is a little greedy but cute and quirky at the same time. The image of the 3 at this time is completely different from the image of indifference, just killing, evil, etc., which is widely spread by the whole sea and known by everyone. The 3 people in front of them are no different from the warm scene when the 2 brothers and sisters of ordinary people brought their sister out for a dinner. Perhaps because of this, Vivi's originally uneasy mood gradually calmed down, and even turned to look at Nami with a smile, and said with a smile, "Well, didn't I say before that I'll pay for the consumption here today? If Miss Nami doesn't mind, I'll treat you to this meal today." Having said that, Vivi also turned her head and looked at the chef, saying, "Mr. Chef, the trouble is helping Mr. Zan Yu, Miss Kuina and Miss Nami with the last order. Of course, the bill is still on me." The chef, who had just been frightened by Nami's complaint, turned pale when he heard that Princess Vivi dared to take the initiative to talk to these 3 peerless werewolves, and immediately admired Princess Vivi even more in his heart. Nami, who was originally looking at the 100,000 Bailey note that he had slapped on the table with a pity face, immediately shoved the note into his chest at an unsightly speed after hearing Vivi's words beside him. Under his clothes, he turned his head to look at Vivi with a smile on his face, and said gratefully, "Thank you, I didn't expect a kind princess like you to exist." Sitting on the other side, Kuina and Zan Wenyan couldn't help thinking at the same time. "It's kindness to help you save money. This kindness is amazing, isn't it?" Zan Yu even whispered, "The country is easy to change, but the nature is hard to change. The little thief cat will always be the little thief cat. When can we get rid of the evil habit of greed for money? It's just a loss to the Dark Moon Knight." Zan Yu's voice was not too small, and everyone who happened to be there could hear it. The smile on Nami's face didn't change in the slightest. He didn't even turn his head to look at Zan Yu, he still looked at Vivi with a smile. It's just that his left hand climbed up Zan Yu's thigh without leaving a trace, and then hit him hard. When Zanyu saw this, he just hooked the corner of his mouth and covered armament haki directly where he was protected by Nami. Nami also seemed to feel something wrong with the touch, and then also covered his little hands with armament haki, and started a new round of confrontation again. Vivi on the side didn't know, the little girl who was really smiling at her, was doing small movements under her hands. But after hearing Zanyu's rant about Nami, Vivi was stunned for a moment, and then he was dumbfounded. Now, she has completely confirmed that although the three of them have unimaginable strengths, their personalities are surprisingly easy to get along with. Miss Nami doesn't have to be like this, no matter what, you are also heroes in the sea now, come to me Alabasta, as a princess, how can I not treat me well? Would you like to wait for the meal? I invite you to go around the palace. And please don't refuse. Nami heard the words, his eyes flashed with surprise, he looked at Vivi in disbelief and said, really, can I really visit the palace? I heard that the palaces of ordinary kings are splendid and full of precious treasures. I really want to see them. This time, even Kuina, who was sitting on the side and had a cold personality, couldn't stand it any longer and directly dismantled Nami Road. Nami, I think it's fake for you to visit the palace, but it's real to visit those treasures. Zanyu also nodded in agreement. Nami, who was dismantled by Kuina, immediately turned his head, stuck out his tongue mischievously, and complained. Sister Kuina, don't just dismantle other people like this, I'm so embarrassed. Hearing this, Kuina rolled her eyes and said, don't make trouble, don't know if we still have something to do when we come here. Originally, after listening to Nami's resentful complaint, Wei Wei, who was in tears and planned to comfort Nami, suddenly changed her face and became serious after hearing Kuina's words. Then he looked at Zanyu and said seriously, I don't know what the three leaders of this trip are. If it is convenient, can you tell me? I will fully cooperate with you, and I just hope that you will not hurt this country. Please. Hearing this, Nami also stopped playing, while Zanyu looked at Vivi playfully, thinking to himself. I thought you could endure it for how long? It seems that although you still love this country and the people here, in terms of experience, compared to 3 years later, it is still a little immature. Thinking so, Zanyu still looked at Vivi, smiled and said. Don't worry, well, what we have to do this time is very simple. Even for you, Alabasta, it is saving a country that is about to fall into crisis, disaster, war. When Vivi heard the words, her complexion changed greatly. She didn't believe that a man like Zanyu, who swore to become the king of the gods, would go to his own country to fool himself. He must have some bad news. Immediately, Vivi hurriedly looked at Zanyu and asked eagerly, Mr. Zanyu, did you know anything about our country? Also please don't hesitate to tell, if you have any needs in the future, our royal family will definitely cooperate with you. After all, the people of this country are innocent. Looking at Vivi so eager, Zanyu's ruby-red eyes flashed a smile, then looked at Vivi, said leisurely. Since Princess Vivi said so, then I have nothing to hide. Having said that, Zanyu asked rhetorically, I wonder if Princess Vivi, have you ever heard the name crocodile? Crocodile. After hearing Zanyu's words, Vivi subconsciously repeated a sentence, then continued. I know, one of the 7 warlords of the sea that Marine recruited a few months ago, came to Alabasta 2 months ago. However, although he is a big pirate, he has not committed any crime in Alabasta. Even in the past 2 months, he has taken the initiative to arrest in front of the public many times, punishing the pirates who came to make trouble and attack. It is because of this that he is worshipped by the residents of the kingdom and gradually became a hero in everyone's mouth. Speaking of which, Vivi seemed to have reacted, looking at Zanyu in shock and said, Mr. Zanyu, what are you trying to say is that crocodile will be the main culprit in causing Alabasta to fall into war? Looking at Vivi's expression, there are surprises, disagreements, and anger, but there is no shock or unacceptability. A strange look flashed across Zanyu's face as he looked at Vivi and asked. You don't seem very surprised by this. Vivi seemed to see the strangeness in Zanyu's eyes and explained. I was originally just for Crocodile, a big pirate who suddenly came to my country with a high profile, and arrested some pirates many times in crowded occasions. Watching the execution of the next person is puzzled. Although I have always wondered what the purpose of Crocodile is for doing everything, my intuition tells me that he is by no means the heroic spirit he has shown in the eyes of everyone. So today when I heard Mr. Zhan Yu say that the country will be in crisis, all I can think of is Crocodile, the big pirate conspirator. Zhan Yu clapped his hands and applauded after listening to Vivi's speech, and said, "It's really worthy of being a real royal princess, and seeing the problem as different from those of the commoners." When he said, "those civilians," Zhan Yu's eyes were obviously disdainful, and he continued, "They don't even think about it. A big pirate will come to a country with good intentions, just to help them deal with other pirates who are also pirates. What is the picture? Fame, or profit? If you say, name, before he came to this country, he was already recognized as the 7 warlords of the sea by the entire sea. Compared with the hero name of a kingdom, the 7 warlords of the sea are more famous. And if you talk about profit, what do you get from their group of ordinary people? Nothing. It's so easy to see that guys who are full of problems all over their body, they don't doubt at all. To actually worship a big pirate as a hero. It's just stupid." After listening to Zhan Yu's narration, Vivi's expression changed, and then he looked at Zhan Yu nervously and said, "Mr. Zhan Yu, do you know what the crocodile conspiracy is? Can you tell me now?" Zhan Yu heard the words, smiled, then looked at Vivi and said with a half smile, "Tell, you don't really believe what I say, do you? Just as you doubted Crocodile, you doubted what I said from the beginning, didn't you?" Princess Vivi. Hearing this, Vivi's originally nervous expression froze, especially when he met Zhan Yu's ruby red eyes that seemed to be able to read people's hearts. His expression completely stiffened. Cough, Mr. Zhan Yu is joking. How could I? The little girl is still too young. Zhan Yu sighed in his heart. Looking at Vivi, whose eyes were dodging and stammering, Zhan Yu directly smiled and waved his hand, interrupting Vivi's insincere lie, saying, "Yes or no, in fact, I don't care, and I don't mind. However, for you, the most important thing at the moment is to make sure that what I said is true or false. And if you want to know whether what I said is true or false, you only need to follow us for 3 or 2 days, and in these 3 or 2 days, you will get the answer you want. Of course, the premise is that you have enough courage to follow us in these 3 or 2 days." After speaking, Zhan Yu turned his head, picked up the knife and fork to taste the deliciousness, and at the same time pointed out, "I just don't know if the people of this country are really that important in someone's heart." Kuina and Nami, who had been sitting quietly on the side of Zhan Yu from the beginning, heard Zhan Yu's last sentence and couldn't help but cast a blank eye at Zhan Yu. Can't this guy talk properly? And Vivi, after struggling for a while with a pretty face, finally gritted his teeth, looked at Zhan Yu who was eating delicious food, and said, "Okay, I promise you, in the next few days, I will follow you all the time. However, I need to tell my father about this first, lest he misunderstand anything." Although he knew that Zhan Yu was provoking himself in that language, and he also saw that the goal of Zhan Yu's trip might be related to him, Vivi finally chose to ignore all this when faced with the safety of the people of the country. Seeing how quickly she made up her mind, and how quick her mind would be to think of other key things, Kuina couldn't help but praise. It is a princess who is beautiful and intelligent, who handles things calmly, thinks smartly, and has a big picture. If such a girl has enough tyrannical strength, she is simply a perfect person. Thinking of this, Kuina couldn't help but turn her eyes slightly, looking at Zhan Yu's aristocratic temperament, perfect face, and equally profound and knowledgeable brain, and then thought, a character like Zhan Yu. However, looking at Zhan Yu's expression, this Princess Vivi still doesn't seem to be the one Zhan Yu has always cared about. A perfect girl like this, who is noble, beautiful, respectful of etiquette, smart, kind, and responsible is not the one who lives in Zhan Yu's heart. How is she so outstanding? Although I am very curious and want to know who she is in Zhan Yu's heart, Kuina is not envious, because as early as 8 years ago, she has also lived in Zhan Yu's heart. Just when Kuina was thinking about this, Vivi took out a pen and paper from his pocket and jumped on the bar to write quickly. After a while, Vivi put the written letter in the small pocket on the chest of Daruduk, who was staying next to him, and patted the good king's fast wing. Vivi watched the fast running those cute big eyes, said, "Run fast, this letter is very, very important. If it is lost, it may cause a riot in the kingdom." So, You must hand over the letter to my father in the shortest possible time, do you understand? Running fast, he nodded smugly, then turned around directly. A pair of duck legs seemed to be dug into hot wheels, and instantly ran out of the hotel and disappeared. Seeing this scene, Zhan Yu smiled, then turned around and looked at the unlovable chef behind the bar, and said with a smile, "Mr. Chef, we can tell anyone about our previous conversation, otherwise." The chef who was cooking shook his hands, and then nodded numbly, but his heart was a little bit about to cry without tears. "I'm just an ordinary little chef, why do you let me hear so much news that I shouldn't hear? I have to say, Vivi still wants to know about the daughter of her father, Nefertiti Cobra." Originally, after listening to the guard's report that Zhan Yu and the three had come to the Alabasta royal city, Cobra's complexion has changed greatly. As I said before, after the news of Kuina's victory over Hawkeye spread, the sea became more and more afraid of Zhan Yu's murderous name. There are even rumors that Zhan Yu started conquering kingdoms in order to become the king of the gods, and if he resisted, he would directly destroy the kingdom to restore the majesty of the king of gods. Lucifer Zhan Yu planned to destroy the world. Lucifer Zhan Yu planned to enslave the whole world. That's why Cobra became so anxious after learning that Zhan Yu and the three of them were in the royal capital of his own country, and his face changed greatly. However, before he could come up with a solution, he was informed by the soldiers that his precious daughter Vivi actually took the initiative to contact such a vicious person. At this moment, Cobra was panicked. Subconsciously, when Cobra planned to pull the kingdom's army to protect his precious daughter from being hurt, Daruduk ran quickly into the palace hall, and finally even hit his head because he couldn't stop. On Cobra. One person and one duck just fell to the ground of Alabasta guard Captain Ecolem's gradually widening mouth. "His Royal Highness, are you all right?" Ecolem came to the side of Cobra who had fallen on the ground with a look of horror, and quickly lifted Cobra up, his expression full of tension and regret. "I'm sorry, as the captain of the kingdom's guard, you have been so derelict in your duties that your Royal Highness was knocked to the ground, and your subordinates are ashamed." When Ecolem was about to say something, Cobra, who was being lifted up, supported the aching lower back, waved to stop Ecolem's accusation, and was kind. "I'm fine, Ecolem doesn't have to blame herself so much." Saying that, with the help of Ecolem, Cobra turned around and looked as if he realized that he had done something wrong. Daruduk, who was lying on the ground and, playing dead, with wide eyes, ran fast and his face changed, eagerly said, "Run fast, why are you the only one back? Where's Vivi?" Hearing Cobra's question, he ran fast and pretended to be dead. While spreading his wings, he took out the envelope from the small pocket that fell on the ground and handed it to the air. Then, after Cobra's anxious result envelope, the wings that were running fast and raised seemed to lose their strength in an instant, and fell directly to the ground, motionless. At this time, Cobra and Ecolem were worried and eagerly looked at the contents of the letter, ignoring the Daruduk possessed by a playboy. Looking at the familiar handwriting of his daughter, Cobra can confirm that the letter is indeed from his daughter. However, while browsing the contents of the letter, Cobra's complexion changed several times. After reading it at the end, Cobra looked up and was obviously relieved. While he was happy that his daughter had grown up, he was also I am a little worried about the situation stated in Vivi's letter and Vivi's own safety. At this time, Ecolem, who had also finished reading the contents of the letter, saw Cobra's sad face, and couldn't help but explain. "Put it down, Your Highness, since Princess Vivi took the initiative to write to you and report to you, it means that Princess Vivi has her own grasp on this matter." In the face of Cypher Zhan Yu and the 7 warlords of the sea crocodile, who are unidentified, Princess Vivi can still consider the whole matter so calmly, which shows that Princess Vivi is already a crown prince with excellent ability and overall view. Air. You should be happy for Princess Vivi. Hearing Ecolem's persuasion, Cobra gradually regained his composure, and after sighing, he said softly, "I hope so." However, on Cobra's face, there was still a worry that could not be resolved. A day later, in Albana, the capital of Alabasta, inside the Crocodile Manor. Still in the dark hall that covered all the sunlight, Crocodile looked at the AHOF news reported by Nico Robin, and punched the wall beside him with some anger. Immediately, the smashed wall turned into a hole the size of a fist, and sunlight spread through the hole, bringing a ray of light to the dark hall. What's going on with these Marines? Why has it been a day and they haven't moved? In the past, didn't you just go where you heard there were criminals, and wanted to capture all the criminals in the entire sea and to impel down? What the hell is going on this time? Saying that, Carlochdale turned his head and looked directly at Nico Robin, who was leaning against the pillar and folded his arms. Miss Gall Sunday, could it be that you didn't tell Marine the news? How could Crocodile know that this Marine, stationed outside Alabasta, witnessed Kuina's inhuman combat power a month ago and escaped before the entire Whiskey Peak shattered and sank into the sea? With the group of Marines who stunned and dared not do anything. Hearing Crocodile doubting himself, Robin's expression did not change at all, and he calmly said, "You can use your own information to confirm whether I have not arranged for someone to send the information." Looking at Robin, who had a magnanimous face and showed no sign of guilty conscience, Crocodile's expression changed, and then he regained his previous composure, and said in his unique low voice, "Ah, I'm sorry, I was a little impatient just now, I blamed you Miss Gall Sunday, don't forget to think about it." Hearing Crocodile's sincere apology, Robin remained calm and said, "I don't have any dissatisfaction, but Mr. 1, Mr. 2 have already begun to inquire about when the plan will be implemented. I think, boss, you also need to pay attention to this issue." Hearing that Robin didn't blame him for his gaffe, Crocodile was obviously relieved, and then he answered Robin's later question, saying, "Notify them, let them wait for 2 or 3 days, the ideal township battle plan can be officially implemented." Then, Crocodile turned around again, looked at the crowd of people on the street outside the window, and continued. "And then, since Marine is unreliable, it's up to us. Wait another day, if Marine doesn't do it today, I'll have to visit this cipher myself. However, I'd better hope that they will not interfere with my plan, otherwise, I don't mind sending them to heaven to continue to dream of their gods and gods." That night, in the suite hall of a luxury hotel in the capital. "Wow, Vivi, your country's clothes are so beautiful. It's only half the street today, and you can buy so many beautiful clothes. It's a lot of money. Ah, it's Nami, you are too good at bargaining. Those shopkeepers who buy clothes are probably crying now. Hey, how can you exaggerate what you said, Sister Kuina? I just bought it through the normal price reduction method, did I force them? What's there to cry about? However, you dragged the shopkeeper for more than 2 hours because of a piece of clothing." Zhan Yu was sitting on the sofa with a thick book in his hand. Hearing the voices of the 3 girls in the hall, he couldn't help but chuckle and shook his head. It is really hard to imagine that the relationship between a woman and a woman has changed from a stranger to a close friend. It turns out that it only takes one shopping trip to succeed directly. Even Kuina, who is obsessed with kendo on weekdays and not very interested in other things, was dragged by Nami today and followed Vivi to stroll around the most prosperous and lively streets of Albana, the capital of Alabasta, but now she has got this look. Women, what a magical creature. Zhan Yu was sighing in his heart, and suddenly frowned, then a red light flashed in his eyes, and observation hockey suddenly moved towards the shop in the corridor outside the suite. "Huh, is it her?" A look of joy flashed across Zhan Yu's face, followed by a hint of doubt in his heart, and he murmured, "Is she here to target us at this time?" Thinking of this, Zhan Yu's mouth curved into a corner, and he laughed softly. "Then let me see what you're going to do." As he spoke, he seemed to notice a look at himself. Zhan Yu turned his head, just in time to meet Kuina's questioning look. Zhan Yu immediately knew that, due to the keen perception of a swordsman, Kuina also noticed the figure in the corridor walking towards his another suite. Laughing, Zhan Yu raised his index finger in front of his mouth in silence. Looking at Zhan Yu's actions and expressions, Kuina understood that Zhan Yu wanted to deal with the incoming person himself, so he felt relieved and ignored the matter. In the corridor, a tall woman wearing a pure white coat and a cowboy hat stepped on high heels, just like ordinary hotel guests, walked steadily to the door of the house next door to Zhan Yu and the others, opened the door and left directly. "Go in." She is Robin. During this process, Robin did not have any abnormality in the whole process, and did not even have any shortness of breath. After closing the door, Robin's beautiful eyes looked around, then brought a chair and put it down against the wall. On the other side of the wall is Zhan Yu's suite for 4. Then Robin sat directly on the chair, crossed his hands in front of his chest, put on a strange posture, and said in his heart, "Flower, flower, fruit, ear blossoms. In an instant, an ear suddenly appeared on the wall of Zanyu Another's suite, and the bridge grew silently. Listening clearly to the discussions between the three women in Zanyu's suite, Robin calmed down and thought to himself. Let me hear it. What's so special about you who dare to face Marine, declare war on world government and celestial dragons? Do you really have enough confidence to do this, or just have some powerful strength and become arrogant ignorant? Thinking like this, Robin gradually closed his eyes, ready to listen carefully to Zanyu's conversation. As for surveillance, why does eavesdropping only use earbuds instead of eyebuds? After so many years of escaping, and finding new ones to rely on, betrayal, and escape again and again, Robin has long discovered that some real powerhouses are very sensitive to other people's sights, and they can easily be discovered. Of these three, the weakest are Marine Admiral's backup level. Such a powerhouse, Robin would not be so foolish as to think that if he used the eye blossom, they wouldn't notice. Yes, Robin only noticed 3 people. As for who the other ordinary person is, Robin doesn't know, but he doesn't care. However, just as Robin was about to eavesdrop, a gentle boy's voice suddenly came from the ear blossoms. What does this, miss, want to know? If you need anything, you can say it directly, but I'm happy to help, miss. Of course, if you're going to listen to something in the corner, then I'm a little sorry, you might be disappointed tonight. The moment he heard the boy's voice, Robin's body was shocked, and his expression was a little surprised. She even realized that she had been exposed before she officially started. However, hearing the gentle tone of the young man opposite, there seemed to be no anger. Robin also suppressed the shock in his heart, leaning his back against the wall and exclaiming. It's amazing, as expected of a boy with a reward of 1.5 billion Bailey, who is called Cypher by the whole sea, his perception is really sharp. When Robin's voice fell, he heard Zanyu's still gentle voice coming again. Miss Robin is wrong. Speaking of which, I was offered a reward to be called a fallen evil spirit, but Miss Robin was called the son of a devil. Speaking of which, we both seem to be the same kind of person. Ah! Hearing the gentle laughter of the young man on the opposite side, Robin's shocking emotion that was still suppressed gradually faded, and the corners of his mouth also showed a beautiful arc. He looked up at the ceiling, and replied with a chuckle. So it's true that an evil god and a demon are enemies of the righteous Marines. Speaking of this, Robin couldn't help but recall the scene that happened in O'Hara. A trace of loneliness and pain flashed on his face. For a while, there was silence between the two. At this time, Zanyu, who was next door, seemed to be feeling something, and directly changed the subject, saying, By the way, Miss Robin doesn't seem to say, what exactly do you want to know when you come here so late? If it's general information, I can tell Miss Robin. Hearing the gentle voice on the opposite side, Robin, who was leaning against the wall, asked curiously for a while. I'm eavesdropping, aren't you angry? Facing Robin's questioning, Zanyu, who was also leaning against the wall next to his ear, just smiled, and then changed the subject and said, So, what is the purpose of Miss Robin's coming here tonight? Listening to Zanyu next door, who avoided talking about his own problems, Robin didn't bother and responded directly. It's nothing, I just want to come here to see with my own eyes, what kind of person is the legendary man who dared to declare war directly on the whole world. After speaking, Robin suddenly took a deep breath, raised his arms to the previous position again, and shouted softly. Flower, flower, fruit, the flower in front of you. On the wall of Zanyu's suite, next to the weird ear, eyes appeared again. The strange eyes turned, first swept over the 3 girls in the hall who were discussing something with 3 6 zeros on their faces, and then turned to the side. Just happened to see a young man wearing a pure white shirt on the upper body and a blue suit and trousers on the lower body, looking at himself as if he was looking at him. The young man has long sky blue hair, and his sapphire red eyes are filled with the gentleness of ordinary people, just like a gentleman, a gentle young man. It is very different from the domineering, aggressive and ruthless image rumored in the sea. Seeing the tenderness in Zanyu's eyes, Robin lost his mind for a while. I still remember the last time I saw someone who looked at me with such tender eyes was on Oya Island 18 years ago, when Saul was parting. Whether it's strange or not, I tell you that laughing more will make you happy. Smile a lot, and smile when you are sad. Laughing at he. Quote. Even if you are alone now, you will meet a companion one day. The sea is infinite, and one day, there will be a companion who will protect you. Born in this world, you will never be alone forever. For a time, Robin's eyes gradually became a little wet, and in such a blurry situation, the figure of Zanyu that he saw in his eyes seemed to merge with the big man in his memory. Taylor he. On the other side of the wall, Robin's body gradually slipped from the wall and slumped on the ground with tears in his eyes, but Robin just didn't let them drip down. The subconscious in his mouth was like Saul taught himself how to get rid of his sadness and laughed lowly. Tyler, wow, Tyler he. Robin's laughter from this side still seemed to be vaguely spread to the next door. Zanyu couldn't help looking at the ear on the wall in front of him curiously, and asked suspiciously. Robin, miss, what are you talking about? Zanyu's voice instantly awakened Robin from the sadness of the past. He quickly raised his hand to wipe the tears from his reddish eyes, and said, No, you heard wrong, I didn't say anything. Having said that, Robin stood up along the wall again. His voice had returned to its previous calm, and said, Your presence interferes with Crocodile's plans, and tomorrow he will come to find you and drive you away. He is a Logia sand fruit capable person, and in this desert kingdom, he is an invincible existence. You'd better stay away from Princess Vivi, you'd better get out of here tonight. After speaking, Robin untied the ear blossom directly, walked towards the door, and quickly disappeared into the corridor. After listening to Robin's last advice, Zanyu twitched the corners of his mouth and said to himself, Invincible, it's just a mere Logia fruit ability, what about the word, invincible? Come to see me tomorrow. Just in time, when the 3 new inheritors gather, let's see how many can be awakened at that time. As he spoke, Zanyu's expression became silent, and he quietly walked to the side of the chair to prepare. A trace of tyrannical killing intent flashed in his ruby-red eyes. And the target of this killing intent is not Crocodile, but Sengoku. Akainu, Qingshong, Esther Rat, Stallo Berry, Fire Mountain. With Zanyu's strength, how could he really not hear Robin's movements clearly? Thinking of Robin's whispered laughter just now, Zanyu couldn't help clenching his hands tightly. Until now, Robin's intermittent, Taylor wow, Taylor he, wow, still echoes in Zanyu's mind. After taking a few deep breaths, it was still difficult to suppress the raging killing intent in his heart. Zanyu's whole body began to emit a faint white chill unconsciously, and even gradually changed towards a blood-red chill. Dare to hurt someone I care about for nearly 20 years, you all deserve to die. Zanyu murmured in a low voice, and at the same time, Han Gong, who had put it aside, seemed to sense the killing intent in his master's heart, and he couldn't help echoing the same trembling blade. At this moment, a slender hand suddenly grabbed Zanyu's clenched fist, awakening Zanyu from his previous tyranny. Looking up, what you can see is Kuina's pretty face full of worry. At the same time, the selection month can also feel that Kuina's jade hand holding her fist is a little stiff and trembling. This time, Zanyu was completely awake, immediately released his fists, and at the same time collected the cold air that had begun to radiate from himself, and then looked at Kuina apologetically and said, Sorry, Kuina, for worrying you. Looking at Zanyu, who had sobered up, he was also relieved. Then he said, You're fine, it's fine. After speaking, Kuina didn't know how to continue. However, she never let go of Zanyu's jade hand. At this time, Zanyu also had a strange feeling of being caught, and he was speechless in astonishment. The atmosphere was a little silent for a while, except for the hilarious sounds of Nami and Vivi in the hall. Kuina suddenly looked at Zanyu and said, That elder sister just now is the one who has lived in your heart since childhood, right? Zanyu heard Kuina suddenly say such a sentence, and immediately looked at Kuina with some astonishment, as if she knew something long ago. Seeing the startled expression on Zanyu's face, Kuina suddenly smiled and glanced at Zanyu, then said, Humph, stupid, you have always claimed that there is nothing unknown in the world. Don't you know that when girls face emotional problems, they will have a keen intuition that is 100 times more than usual? That elder sister should also be an inheritor, right? She seems to be someone with a story. Zanyu, can you tell me about him now? Looking at Kuina's curious eyes, Zanyu was silent for a moment, and then slowly introduced Robin. After 10 minutes, she almost betrayed and ran for her life to come to this point. Speaking of which, the killing intent that had been suppressed could not help gushing out again. But at this moment, Zanyu suddenly felt that he was being swarmed into his arms, and he could smell a girl's unique body fragrance in his nostrils. Zanyu was stunned for a moment and felt like a small soft hand was caressing his head. I didn't expect Sister Robin's past to be so tragic, but she lives so strong. It's really amazing. However, since she is the person you care about, then her enemy, I will also regard it as my own enemy and face it with you. But the oath I discovered since I was a child. Kuina stroked the long blue hair on the top of Zanyu's head in his arms, and when he was soothing Zanyu, he suddenly felt that his waist was being hugged by Zanyu. The jade hand who was comforting Zanyu gave a slight pause. At this time, Zanyu's dull voice sounded from his arms. Kuina is also the most important person in my life, and that's what I've been telling myself since I was a kid. Hearing Zanyu's words, Kuina's beautiful face suddenly showed a beautiful smile. Touching Zanyu like comforting his younger brother, Kuina thought. Zanyu, you are also a person with a story. Although, ever since you came to the dojo when you were infancy, although I have grown up with you since childhood, although I have witnessed every step of your growth. But you seem to have another story, a story without me. You are still so mysterious, maybe that's why you became the master of Zero. However, I will stand by your side in each of your stories from now on, Zanyu. The next day, in the hotel lobby, just like yesterday, after Zanyu came down to eat, everyone except the chef in the shop seemed to have seen some sea kings and ran away one by one. Only the chef was left to make food for Zanyu and the others again, crying without tears. Coincidentally, this chef is the same chef who cooked in the restaurant yesterday. Yesterday, I originally watched Zanyu and the others eat at that restaurant, but today they jumped to work as chefs at this luxury hotel, but they actually met Zanyu again. The chef wanted to cry without tears. I'm really struggling. Just when the chef felt self-pity in his heart, a familiar female voice suddenly came over. Hey, Mr. Chef, didn't you work in that restaurant? How come you are here today? Hearing someone calling him, the chef who was cooking couldn't help but turn his head to look at a man on the bar who was shrouded in a black robe, and said in surprise. You are Princess Vivi. You really started following yesterday. Having said that, the chef could not help but look carefully at Zanyu, who was also sitting in front of the bar at the same time. Vivi looked at the chef's appearance, and nodded his head hiding under the black robe, then said. Yeah, actually Zanyu and the others are very nice, we went shopping together yesterday. Besides, as the princess of this country, I have an obligation and a duty to help the country and help the people solve the crisis. The chef was moved to tears when he heard Vivi's words. At this moment, Zanyu suddenly looked at the chef and chuckled. Mr. Chef, please prepare food for 6 people today, and 2 guests will come later. After speaking, Zanyu paused, then continued. However, I suggest that Mr. Chef, you'd better finish the food as soon as possible, and then leave here first. After all, one of the 2 guests who will come in a while is a little grumpy. After the chef listened to Zanyu's words, combined with hearing Zanyu's conversation with Princess Vivi yesterday, he immediately asked who the grumpy guest Zanyu was talking about. Crocodile. After the chef picked up the name in his heart, his hands in cooking immediately became countless times faster. Immediately, an overwhelming aroma permeated the entire hall. Looks like it. Vivi sniffed the fragrance and sighed suddenly. And Zanyu, who was sitting on the side, also smiled. At this moment, a cup of coffee was pushed on the bar in front of Zanyu. Zanyu took it naturally, then turned to look at Kuina Road, who also came over and sat beside him. Thanks. Kuina was also holding a glass of juice and naturally sat next to Zanyu. Hearing Zanyu's thanks, her pretty face just smiled. Behind the two, Nami, who helped Zanyu hold the Han Palace, held a glass of juice in his right hand, looked suspiciously at the backs of Zanyu and Kuina, and whispered. It always feels like something happened between these two. Am I wrong? Why is there a sense of loss that measures billions of Baileys? When Nami was suspicious, he was seen by Vivi on the side, and even pulled Nami to sit beside him. Later, Nami also abandoned the previous idea and chatted with Wei with a smile. After 10 minutes, oops, the door of the hotel was pushed directly, and 2 figures walked in from outside the door. Looking at the situation in the lobby, the 2 walked directly to the bar where the 4 Zanyu were sitting at the front. They are Crocodile and Robin. Robin, who was walking behind Crocodile towards the bar, looked at Zhan Yu's back, which was getting closer, and sighed in his heart, secretly said, "Why don't you listen to other people's advice and leave last night?" When he came to the bar, Crocodile sat down directly, and the seat next to him was Zhan Yu. And Robin, who was standing behind Crocodile, looked like a qualified secretary. "Lu Cypher, Zhan Yu, actually you shouldn't come to this country." On the other side, the whole body was shrouded in black robes. Vivi, who was sitting with Nami, froze suddenly after hearing Crocodile's first sentence, and then an angry expression rose on the pretty face under the black robe. Look. With her intelligence, she could already tell from the first sentence that what Zhan Yu said to her yesterday was true. Crocodile is really planning to cover his country with a conspiracy. Let the country fall into crisis and war. Chapter 91. Vivi couldn't help being a little angry for a while, but also a little lucky. Fortunately, I was worried that someone would agitate Zhan Yu and the three of them yesterday, so I came to find Zhan Yu and his party. Fortunately, I finally chose to stay yesterday and find out the truth. Otherwise, thinking of what Zhan Yu said yesterday, this country is about to fall into crisis, disaster, and war. Vivi's body could not help shivering, but he still held back the anger in his heart, thinking, "No, I have to hold back. All details of Crocodile's conspiracy must be heard clearly, and then all Crocodile's conspiracy must be told to the people of the kingdom. I must expose the true face of Crocodile." With this thought in mind, Vivi tried his best to suppress the anger in his heart, sitting next to Nami, trying to reduce his sense of existence as much as possible. At the same time, Nami and Kuina ate their food quietly, as if they didn't see Crocodile at all. And Zhan Yu listened to Crocodile and smiled. Zhan Yu did not respond directly, but pushed the two prepared dishes in the direction of Crocodile, then turned to look in the direction of Crocodile, and chuckled. "Would you like to have a breakfast first? This is something I specially asked Mr. Chef to prepare in advance for the two of you. Mr. Crocodile, and this Miss Robin." Saying that, Zhan Yu looked away from Crocodile and looked at Robin, who was standing on the side in a tight black skirt with a tight hip wrap. A look of surprise flashed in his eyes, and praised, "Miss Robin looks pretty good in this outfit." Hearing this, Robin was stunned for a moment as he watched Zhan Yu look at the splendid look in his ruby red eyes. She couldn't understand the young man in front of her. "Even though you are facing the big pirates of the 7 warlords of the sea like Crocodile, you still have the heart to appreciate your own beauty." Moreover, he was obviously only of the age of a young teenager, yet he was able to look at girls so openly, and he even praised directly. Is it because I don't know whether to call him mature or cheeky? Thinking so, Robin still looked at Zhan Yu, took a step back, stood behind Crocodile again, and said, "Thank you for your compliment." Crocodile turned his eyes away from the direction without leaving a trace, dispelling his doubts about Robin, then turned around and looked at Zhan Yu and said lightly, "You seem to have expected us to come, can you tell me why?" Mr. Lu Cypher. Looking away from Robin, Zhan Yu picked up the glass of red wine in front of him, took a sip, then looked at Crocodile, still didn't mean to answer Crocodile's question, but started talking about Crocodile's information, saying, "Crocodile, belonging to the 7 warlords of the sea, nicknamed the Sand Crocodile, had a bounty of 81 million berry before joining Shichibukai. The president of the criminal group Baroque Works, codenamed Mr. Zero. Sand fruit ability person, can freely manipulate sand, and can sand the body. The dream is to become the pirate king. It's just a pity that I went to the New World to challenge Whitebeard many years ago and failed. In order to defeat Whitebeard again, I accidentally heard that Pluton, one of the 3 ancient weapons on the sea, was in Alabasta. So, after some planning, I first deceived the establishment of the Utopia plan, and gathered a group of subordinates, that is, the members of the current Baroque Work Club, and asked them to collect information for you and perform some assassination missions. Afterwards, you first entered the eyes of the people of this kingdom as a hero, but secretly placed a reserve of dance fans on the rainy ground, planning to launch dance fans at King Alabasta, and gather all the rain clouds from other areas of the kingdom in the royal capital, let these regions fall into drought. At the same time, arranged for his subordinate Mr. Tu to eat clone fruit, and Bentham, who can transform into any person, transformed into King Cobra to deliver dancing powder in the port of the capital, and in the process deliberately spilled the dancing powder to expose it. In front of everyone, it is good to put the blame on Cobra, and finally cause a riot. And you can reappear as a hero, take over the kingdom, and finally let Miss Robin beside you interpret the historical text hidden in the palace and get news of the ancient weapon and the battleship Pluton. Having said that, looking at Crocodile, who was speechless with shock on his face, Zan Yu thought for a while, and then said, "Hey, what do you say about this plan? It looks perfect, but I think it's rubbish. Since your purpose is the Pluton battleship, why don't you take Miss Robin directly to the palace, take control of Cobra, and let him show you the historical text? It's obvious that you can accomplish your goal in one night at most, but you plan to do it here for 2 or 3 years. What on earth were you thinking about when you made the plan?" In the end, Zan Yu has shown no mercy to Crocodile's plan. Crocodile, who had reacted to it, stood up suddenly, his face full of horror, and looked at Zan Yu, who was holding red wine in shock. His eyes were full of killing intent. He said, "You guy, why do you know so much about me? You even know about my past and some plans that they didn't even have time to tell Robin. Where the hell are you? Which force is standing behind you?" Of course, Crocodile simply chose to ignore Zan Yu's last comment. Sitting next to Nami, Vivi, who had been reducing her sense of existence, also stood up suddenly after hearing that Crocodile actually admitted what Zan Yu said, and pulled off the black robe from her body, her pretty face full of anger. Looking at Good King, Good Kedar, who looked at himself with some surprise on his face, he roared loudly, "Crocodile, you really are not a good person. How dare you drag the whole of Alabasta into war because of the bullshit news? Humph, I'm going to tell everyone in the kingdom what you're going to do. I will not let your conspiracy succeed." The moment Crocodile saw Vivi, she obviously recognized her identity instantly, but she didn't expect Vivi to be here, and she listened to all her plans throughout the process. Involuntarily, the killing intent in Crocodile's eyes was even more intense, but after a while, Crocodile regained his composure and even sat down again. Looking at Vivi mockingly, Crocodile took a cigar and said lightly, "What if you know all my plans, do you think I'll let you leave the door of this hotel?" Saying that, Crocodile swung the hook. Immediately, the floor of the hall flipped, and then countless fine sand broke through the floor and floated in the air. Looking at this scene, Vivi wanted to go ahead in disbelief. However, the moment she was about to lift her foot, the floating fine sand directly turned into a sand knife, hitting her neck. Glancing at the stiff Vivi, Crocodile spit out a circle of eyes and said dismissively, "The weak don't even choose the way to die. Don't even expect to help others." Even if it wasn't for the time being that the true identity and purpose of the 3 Zan Yu people in front of them, as well as their true relationship with this Vivi princess, Crocodile would not recommend to obliterate them directly. Feeling the coldness of the sand knife in front of his neck and the tingling of his skin, as well as Crocodile's cold and realistic words, Vivi's expression stiffened, and he finally took his steps back. Vivi clenched his fists tightly. His face was full of unwillingness. "If I have power too, power." Thinking of this, Vivi couldn't help turning his head directly, looking at Nami sitting beside him with hopeful eyes, pulling up Nami's arms with both hands, begging with eyes full of eyes, "Nami, please help me." While speaking, Vivi's eyes burst into tears. Nami, who was sitting, was shocked when she saw that the sister she knew was crying, and she was shocked. She quickly stood up and wiped away the tears for Vivi, but at this time, she did not promise anything directly, but gestured towards Vivi in the direction of Zan Yu. At this time, Nami has actually reacted, and Vivi is one of the 3 inheritors that Zan Yu said before. She also knew that Zan Yu must have some plan of his own to wake up Vivi and become the next Dark Moon Knight like himself. Therefore, Nami didn't do anything without authorization and could help Vivi. He only signaled to Vivi to ask her to ask Zan Yu. Seeing Nami's gesture, Vivi immediately reacted and looked at Zan Yu with hope. And Zan Yu turned around unknowingly to meet Vivi's look for help. Zan Yu suddenly said, "Even if I can't help you this time and let you save your country, what about next time? This time it's just, this Mr. Sand Crocodile next to me, so what about next time? What about next time? You must know that once the news of ancient weapon Pluton in Alabasta is leaked, all the strengths in the entire sea will come one after another like hounds that smell meat. Even marine, world government will do this. Perhaps you don't know the meaning of ancient weapon, Pluton, then let me tell you, the Pluton warship has the destructive power to destroy an entire island with one shot. What kind of power would not be tempted by such things? In other words, even if I am not interested, I absolutely don't want others to get it. So the final result is that all the forces will come over. Then, when the time comes, how will you protect your country? When Zanyu was talking, both Nami and Kuina looked at Vivi with hope, hoping that Vivi would wake up. The unknown crocodile and Robin stared at Zanyu, wondering why a character like him said this to a princess of the kingdom at this time, even as if he was teaching Vivi. Humph, I'll see what the hell you're going to do. The ground here has been completely deserted by me, and there is an endless desert under my feet. Humph, Lucifer Zanyu, no matter what you want to do, in this desert, I am an invincible existence. Looking at Zanyu flatly, Crocodile thought to himself. At the same time, under the ground of the hotel, countless sands are slowly gathering. Hearing Zanyu's words, Vivi was at first shocked by the power of ancient weapon Pluton, but after hearing Zanyu's description of all the benefits, his face turned pale and pale. If it really comes to that time, I am afraid that the entire kingdom will be directly destroyed. Thinking of the tragic state of the kingdom, Vivi couldn't help but sigh. It's just that when Vivi was about to fall, he was discovered by the sharp-eyed Nami, and then directly changed Vivi to support. Looking at the pale face of Vivi who was being supported by him, Nami's little face also showed a trace of unbearable. However, even though Vivi was already like this, Zanyu's gentle but cruel words were still passed on again. Just like the sand crocodile said, the weak don't even choose the way to die. Don't even expect to help others. When the time comes, who should you ask for? Hearing that Zanyu was so open and honest, Crocodile could not help but snorted and expressed his dissatisfaction. Zanyu just smiled and didn't care much. And when Vivi heard Zanyu's last words, the whole person seemed to sink into the boundless darkness, unable to breathe. Right, power. In an instant, Vivi seems to have caught the last ray of light, and the big eyes shine here. There is a thirst for power in my heart. The weak don't even choose the way to die. Don't even expect to help others. If I had the power, I wouldn't be trapped here by the big pirate crocodile. If I also have the same power as Zanyu and the others who are enemies of the whole world, I can still walk on the sea smartly. Then even if everyone pays attention to Alabasta in the future, I will be able to protect this country. Protect all the people. In an instant, Vivi seemed to be enlightened. While the thirst for power reached the ultimate, the mind instantly became clearer than ever before. Thinking back on all the details of his relationship with Zanyu in the past 2 days, Vivi couldn't help but look at Zanyu with hope, and said with certainty. Zanyu, can you give me the strength to protect this country? Although I don't know what you plan to get from me, as long as you can give me strength, I am willing to agree to any request you make. Having said this, Vivi bit his lip, a flush of blush suddenly appeared on his pretty face, but then he still looked at Zanyu firmly and shouted directly. Even myself, I can give it to you. Zanyu was originally immersed in his mind, but when he saw one of the 3 flickering lights of inheritance suddenly burst into a strong light, his face was overjoyed. He knows that the light of Vivi's heritage has been completely lit. At the same time, it also means that his 12 nights plan is one step closer to completion. At this moment, Zanyu's handsome face couldn't help showing a touch of joy. At this time, Zanyu suddenly heard Vivi's words. Although I don't know what you plan to get from me, as long as you can give me strength, I am willing to agree to any request you make. Even myself, I can give it to you. Hey, the red wine Zanyu had just sipped into his mouth instantly spurted out, and looked at the watercolored princess with waist-length hair in disbelief and speechlessness. What kind of person does this girl think of herself? When Nami and Kuina on the side heard Vivi's last sentence, they couldn't close their mouths in surprise at the same time, but after seeing Zanyu's gaffe in the next second, they couldn't help but laugh with their small mouths hanging. Robin, who was standing behind Crocodile, said Vivi's words, and seemed to think of his past self. How similar is Alabasta's situation to O'Hara at that time? Seeing Vivi who was trying his best to save his country, even if he tried to save his own country, Robin's eyes were a little moved. As for Crocodile, who was sitting on the side, he also glanced at Vivi a little differently. I didn't expect that on this sea, there really is a princess who wholeheartedly considers her country and the people. However, the strangeness in Crocodile's eyes only appeared for a moment, and then he turned his eyes to Zan Yu again. He wants to know what will happen to this young man called Lucifer, Zan Yu, the fallen evil god by the sea. Is he really, as the princess said, that he can give power to other people? If that's the case, thinking of this, Crocodile's eyes inadvertently glanced at Nami Kuina and the two women who were laughing at Zan Yu's joke, and his eyes suddenly lit up. The unparalleled swordsman who surpasses the level of a great swordsman that I have never heard of before. Similarly, a thunder fruit-capable person who has not had any news on the sea before, the thunder spirit. Impossible. As if thinking of something, Crocodile's eyes suddenly lit up, instantly overturning his previous conjecture about Zan Yu's identity. If this is the case, then the so-called King of the Gods may really become a reality in the near future. Now, the only thing that needs to be verified is the initial speculation, whether Zan Yu really has the ability to empower others. Thinking of this, Crocodile looked at Zan Yu with burning eyes, and his interest in the next development of this matter temporarily suppressed even the idea of killing the 4 Zan Yu people. On the other hand, Crocodile's eyes naturally couldn't escape Zan Yu's perception, but Zan Yu didn't care about it at the moment. Looking at the blushing face at this time, the shyness in his beautiful big eyes, but the stubbornness that was still difficult to hide, Zan Yu's ruby red eyes flashed an imperceptible black smile and then wiped it. Wiping the drink at the corner of his mouth, he looked into Vivi's eyes and said with a light smile. Okay, then I'll give you the power you want, and I want your contract. After inheriting the power, join the Dark Moon 12 Riders, I created and become the 3rd knight in the contract. Having said that, Zan Yu took the first step in his mind and took out the ring of inheritance belonging to Vivi. Under everyone's attention, Zan Yu stretched out his right hand, and a white ring lay quietly in his hand. And under the jade of the ring, there can be a number. Kuina, Nami, and even Robin couldn't help but look at Zan Yu when they first heard Zan Yu say, I want you. However, after hearing Zan Yu's words, Kuina rolled his eyes at Zan Yu, and Nami whispered, it's that nasty fun again. However, the moment he saw the inheritance star ring in Zan Yu's hand, Nami hurried over, looked at the numbers on the ring curiously, and exclaimed, 257. 2 more than me. It seems that Vivi's legacy is stronger than mine. Saying that, Nami turned to Vivi with some envy. On the other hand, Crocodile, who has been paying attention to Zan Yu's actions since the beginning, has his eyes narrowed when he hears Zan Yu and Nami's words. It appears to be true. Inheritance, rings, rankings, these should be the key points of the power they say. 2 more than Nami, the spirit of thunder. It seems that this ring also has an important meaning. With this thought in mind, Crocodile's eyes swept across Nami, Kuina and Zan Yu, only to find that they all had a ring on their left finger. Seeing this scene, Crocodile was even more sure of the guess in his heart, and his eyes flashed for a while. No one knew what he was thinking at this time. At this time, Vivi recovered from Zan Yu's nasty sentence just now, and when he heard Nami's words again, the Red Star's complexion gradually recovered, looked at Zan Yu curiously, and asked, what is this ring? Hearing Vivi's curious question, Nami took the initiative to introduce instead of Zan Yu. In short, the inheritance star ring is the only proof of identity for our inheritors. After Nami finished speaking, Zan Yu looked at Vivi and continued. How do you want to accept this power? In exchange for joining the Dark Knights, in exchange for power enough to protect Alabasta? You can think about it. From the moment you accept the contract, if you don't fulfill the contract in the future, the power of the contract will take back all the power you inherited. At the same time, when you become a Dark Moon Knight, you will be destined to be the enemy of the world government. Hearing Zan Yu's words, Vivi's expression did not hesitate, and he looked at Zan Yu firmly and said, rather than entrusting comfort to others, I would rather have the power to protect my country with my own hands. Having said that, Vivi took the ring from Zan Yu's hand and put it on his left middle finger, solemnly swore. I, Neferutari, Vivi, are willing to accept the inheritance, join the Dark Moon Knight, and live forever without breaking this oath. I, Neferutari, Vivi, are willing to accept the inheritance, join the Dark Moon Knight, and live forever without violating this oath. Vivi's voice fell, and the ring on his left hand suddenly flashed a light, covering Vivi's whole body, and then it seemed to gradually merge into Vivi's body and disappeared. Seeing this, Zan Yu's mouth curled into a smile, and his gaze towards Vivi was also much gentler. Then he said, "Since you have signed a contract, then I will give you the power you need." Having said that, Zan Yu stood up, stretched out his right index finger, and pointed it directly between Vivi's eyebrows. It takes time, a dazzling light suddenly blooms from the center of Vivi's eyebrows. And Vivi fainted at the moment when this light lit up. It was Nami who was beside Vivi with quick eyes and quick hands, and directly supported Vivi, and Vivi did not fall down. At the same time, Zan Yu's mind, 367, also entered his mind and said to the system, "System, call up Vivi and her heritage hero information." Then, a virtual panel unfolded in Zan Yu's mind. Inheritance 3. Neferutari, Vivi. Age, 16 years old. Heritage heroes. Arturia, Pendragon. Hero ranking, 257th. Ability, 1. Folding strategy and tactics, skill inheritance, 100%. 2. Writing, skill inheritance, 100%. 3. Intuition A. It is the ability to determine the most suitable action for oneself in an instant. A-level intuition has entered the field of predicting the future. It can predict the trajectory of the wind and intuition, and avoid the attack of firearms and firearms. At the same time, it can invalidate vision to a certain extent. Hearing obstruction. Skill inheritance, 100%. 4th, release the magic power, A. Magic release refers to strengthening the weapon and body through magic. At a rank, the originally weak and weak girl knight will have the power to easily overwhelm many strong men. Skill inheritance, 100%. 5. Leadership B. Skill inheritance, 100%. 6th, Excalibur, Sword of Oath of Victory, skill inheritance, 100%. 7. Invisible Air, Wind King Barrier, plus Wind King Hammer, skill inheritance, 100%. 8. Avalon, Distant Ideal Hometown, skill inheritance, 100%. Hero Heritage, 100%. Current Strength, equivalent to Super Admiral Strength. Reminder, the Sword of Oath of Victory with scabbard has not been claimed. Looking at the panel in front of him, a look of surprise flashed across Zan Yu's face. Then he looked at the name, Altalia, and then looked at the girl in front of him who had passed out while receiving the inheritance, and thought to himself, maybe it is the same dedication to strength and love for one's own country that made Vivi directly recognized by the King of Dull Hair. It is precisely because of this that the directness of hero inheritance and the inheritance of hero skills have reached 100% in the first inheritance at the same time. This is what the system said at the beginning, special circumstances. At the same time, looking at Vivi, who has begun to accept the inheritance, and Zan Yu and Nami, who are temporarily unable to leave, Kuina directly locks his eyes on Crocodile, preventing him from making a sudden attack. However, when Kuina turned her head to stare at Crocodile, she just saw Crocodile's face full of shock and amazement, and even Kuina saw a surprise in Crocodile's eyes. But there is no murder in it. Seemingly aware of Kuina's gaze and precaution, Crocodile withdrew his gaze and remained motionless, as if thinking about these things. Only the cigar in his mouth continued to smoke white. And Robin on the side was also shocked at the scene in front of him at this time. His beautiful eyes were full of disbelief and puzzlement. This kind of thing is simply unscientific. This is the only thought in Robin's mind at this time. Especially after gradually feeling the increasingly tyrannical aura emanating from Vivi, Robin has begun to wonder if the history books he read before are incomplete, or why he has never heard of such anomalies in the sea. Eating devil fruit can make people stronger out of thin air, and the strong has some terrible abilities. Zan Yu didn't know that because of his actions, Robin had already begun to doubt all the historical materials he had learned before, otherwise, he would be dumbfounded. The entire restaurant hall is in a quiet atmosphere like this. Time passes by minute by minute. In the end, when the light on Vivi's index finger between his eyebrows completely dissipated, Zan Yu retracted his index finger. When Nami saw Zan Yu nod to himself, he picked up Vivi and walked towards the upstairs room. At this moment, Crocodile's voice suddenly sounded behind Zan Yu, saying, Is this the confidence that you dare to declare to be the king of the gods? Listening to Crocodile's tone without the slightest killing intent, Zan Yu, who had his back to Crocodile, twitched slightly at the corner of his mouth, then turned around and sat in the previous position again, turned his head to look at Crocodile, and smiled. This, well, it can only be regarded as a big aspect, and there is another confidence, that is the information of my master. As long as it is a person or thing that is slightly famous in the ocean, I know it, just like what I said before, your information. After taking another sip of the cigar and spitting out the circles around his eyes, Crocodile spoke again. Very good foundation. But now it's time to get down to business. The reason why you showed me such a thing that should have been a top secret is nothing but two possibilities. 1. Kill me and silence Nico Robin. 2. I should also be one of the so-called inheritors in your mouth, right? Having said that, Crocodile turned his head to look at Robin, then turned his head again, and set his eyes on Zan Yu, saying, even, Nico Robin, should be one of the inheritors. You also want to recruit us into your Dark Moon 12 riders. The above two possibilities, I personally think, the second possibility is more likely. What did I say? Evil god? No, it's time to call you the king of the gods, Zan Yu. After listening to Crocodile's words, Zan Yu couldn't help clapping his hands, exclaimed. As expected of the sand crocodile who intends to subvert the entire Alabasta kingdom with tricks and ingenuity, I can see my purpose at a glance. Yes, I came to this country precisely because I sense the existence of the three of you. Since you have understood the reason, and have listened to what I told Vivi before about the contract has been inherited, then. Sand crocodile, can you tell me your answer now? Do you want to join us? Become the organization of God, the 12 Knights of the Dark Moon, and the 4th Knight. After seeing Zan Yu's invitation, Crocodile took another sip of the cigar, then suddenly looked at Zan Yu's sapphire ruby red eyes, and said. To be honest, I really care about the inheritance of the master in your hands. However, to be a Dark Moon Knight means to be your subordinate, right? If you want to subdue me, at least you need to show the strength to crush me. Otherwise, if you can't completely crush me even as the leader, then the so-called inheritance power in your hands is nothing more than that. Although joining your organization of gods is more interesting than becoming a pirate king. The dream is more interesting, but now the one thing I want to do most is to take down Whitebeard's head. If the power you gave me can't defeat Whitebeard, then even if I in the contract with you, I will not abide by the contract in the end. Listening to Crocodile's remarks, Zan Yu's mouth twitched slightly, and he thought to himself. Although you are saying all kinds of things that seem to be irrelevant, Sand Crocodile, every word you say is based on the identity of the inheritor after you have surrendered. While saying all kinds of dissatisfaction, but what the subjective consciousness expressed has promised to become the inheritor. Is this what you call a disgusting body integrity? Thinking like this, Zan Yu's smile grew even stronger, looked at Crocodile, and said. Be my subordinate. Well, you could say the same, but to be precise, Zan Yu raised his left hand, showing the 0 ring on his finger in front of Crocodile and Robin, and continued. To be precise, it is to become the subordinate of the 0 Master. After all, the contract you said you saw earlier was signed between the inheritance star ring, in the hand of the inheritor and the 0 ring, in my hand. And I'm looking for Chi Dark Moon 12 riders. Not only will the re-ranking of Dark Moon Knights begin, but even, the identity of the Lord of the 0 Rings, you can all come and seize. Of course, it depends on strength. Whether it is, the ranking among the Dark Moon Knights, or the symbol of the Master who wants to compete for the 12 Dark Moon Knights, 0 Ring, everything is based on personal strength as the only basis. Quote. As for the power you want to take down Whitebeard's head, this depends on the fit between your personal aptitude and the inheritance you have acquired. However, what I can tell you first is that when Vivi wakes up tomorrow, she will be able to defeat Whitebeard. After listening to Zan Yu's remarks, Crocodile and Robin also understood. Strength is respected, is the only order of this god's organization. But after hearing Zan Yu say that Vivi will have the power to defeat Whitebeard after he wakes up, the two of them are instantly shocked. That is Whitebeard, the leader of the New World 4 Emperors. The title of the strongest man in the world was not blown out by himself. Instead, he was forcibly beaten by his destructive strength. Originally, Crocodile was just talking about getting the power to take off Whitebeard's head. I didn't expect Zanyu to actually have such a legacy in his hands. This, how not to shock Crocodile. Wait, Crocodile seemed to have thought of something, turned his eyes slightly, and glanced at the ring on Kuina's left ring finger who was standing beside Zanyu. 254. The number on the inheritance star ring of the previous princess is 257, and already has the power to defeat Whitebeard, so this peerless sword girl Kuina is 3 places higher than that princess. Doesn't it mean that this Dark Moon's first rider, the peerless sword girl Kuina, is stronger than that princess? Could it be that she didn't use all her strength in the decisive battle with Hawkeye a month ago? Thinking of this, Crocodile instantly broke out in a cold sweat. I was secretly glad that I didn't act rashly after I came here before. Otherwise, even if this group of people would not kill themselves for the sake of being the inheritors, it is still very possible that they were seriously injured and half dead. Yes, after listening to Zanyu's comparison of strengths, Crocodile no longer has the idea that Laozi is invincible in the desert. After all, if he and Whitebeard fought here, he would still be the one who was hammered into a dog. For this, Crocodile has no doubts. Even though he thought so, Crocodile still had some doubts about whether what Zanyu said was true. Although he knew that a person with the strength of Zanyu who dared to call himself the king of the gods would never lie, but, after all, what Zanyu said was a little too subservient. After all, that's Whitebeard. After calming down, Crocodile barely regained his composure, looked at Zanyu and said, "Nonsense, stop talking, let me see the strength you said first, and then talk about other things." Hearing this, Zanyu smiled slightly, then turned to look at Kuina beside him, and said, "Kuina, this time it's up to you to compete with Mr. Sand Crocodile. Don't kill yourself, at most half dead, anyway, as long as it's not a dead person, and your ability, you can save it. Oh, by the way, it's better to leave this royal capital, and don't let be affected here, or Vivi wakes up tomorrow morning, and it's hard to explain." Hearing this, Kuina nodded, then glanced at Crocodile with a cold expression, motioned to follow, then turned and walked towards the door. Seeing that Zanyu didn't shoot himself, but only sent Kuina to shoot, Crocodile was furious, but thinking of Kuina's true strength he had guessed, Crocodile suppressed the anger and just followed silently. Seeing this, Robin took a deep look at Zanyu who was sitting in front of the bar with red wine again, and then went out with Crocodile. What Crocodile can think of, Robin can think of too. Also, she wanted to see if Kuina's strength was as terrifying as Zanyu said. Seeing Robin's slender figure leaving, Zanyu took a sip of his drink and smiled. A few seconds later, Zanyu faintly heard Kuina's shouting from outside the door. "Shikai!" Then, the terrified shouts of ordinary residents sounded in an endless stream. "Monster! Run! What a horrible monster!" A few minutes later, when Nami came down from the upstairs, seeing that only Zanyu was drinking quietly in the hall, he walked over and sat beside Zanyu, looked at Zanyu curiously and asked, "Sister Kuina, and that Sand Crocodile and Nico Robin, why are they all gone?" Zanyu elegantly sliced the steak on the bar, while Kaido. "Crocodile wants to challenge Kuina, they should have flown into the desert outside the capital by now." Hearing this, Nami was even more curious, and at the same time picked up the fork and took Zanyu's freshly cut steak into his mouth with lightning speed. Seeing this, Zanyu glanced at Nami helplessly, and then he could only cut a piece for himself. Seeing the helpless expression on Zanyu's face, Nami showed a triumphant smile, and then asked, "Zanyu, you said just now, they flew away. Does Sister Kuina also fly? Is it the legendary Eugean flying?" Speaking of which, Nami seemed to think of that picture of Kuina's sister stepping on the flying sword and proudly volleying into the sky, and her eyes suddenly glowed with golden light. So handsome. Looking at Nami's expression, Zanyu knew what she was thinking. However, when he thought of the true form of Ruka Shikai, looking at Nami's envious expression at this time, the corners of Zanyu's mouth couldn't help but evoke a playful look, saying, "It's really handsome, and, for Kuina's abilities, you've only seen part of it. Kuina's real ability is stronger than you think. Inheritance, the ranking of heroes, the difference in strength between each ranking is huge." Hearing this, Nami nodded thoughtfully. After locking his throat as if to limit his determination, he began to eat delicious food with Zan Yu. More than 10 minutes later, following the screams of ordinary people outside, 3 figures pushed open the door of the restaurant and walked in. Hearing the movement behind him, Nami turned around curiously. As soon as I saw it, Kuina walked over with an indifferent expression. Sister Kuina. Looking at Nami who greeted him, Kuina's cold and indifferent face showed a smile, and then came to Nami and sat down. At this time, Nami saw the other 2 figures at this time, and a strange expression appeared on the pretty face. Hey, I said sand crocodile, you look like this, don't you really go for a swim in the crocodile belly? No wonder Nami asked so. It's just that crocodile's image at this time is really not very good looking. I saw that crocodile's original body fitting and domineering clothes were completely tattered at this time, and even the smooth big back was full of mess at this time, and his face was very pale. Of course, the most important thing is that crocodile's whole body at this time is covered with something like mucus in the body of some animal, which looks a little disgusting. Hearing this, Crocodile looked at Kuina's back with a pale face and fear. Especially when I think of the scene after the 3 of them came to the desert before, the look of fear flowing out of my eyes can't stop. 2 strokes. I just persisted in 2 moves in front of the girl in front of me, and then I went pale. Thinking of the first move that Kuina made with the knife before, a slash slashed, and the desert visible to the naked eye was directly divided into 2 halves. What's even more terrifying is that, with the ability of his sand fruit, Crocodile discovered that the slash went directly to the underground rock layer. What a terrifying strength. As for the second move, I just heard something about Hado number 90, black coffin, and then his entire body was directly shrouded in darkness. Before he could react, countless sword-like things directly stabbed himself into a hornet's nest. What's even weirder is that these black swords seem to have the ability to suppress the elementalization of Logia. In an instant, the self at that time felt the coming of death. At this moment, the surrounding darkness dissipated, and he reappeared in the desert, blood dripping all over his body. At the moment of dying, struggling to raise his head, what he saw was the girl's still cold and indifferent gaze. Before he could ask the girl why she had targeted the killer, she saw that the knife in the girl's hand had once again turned into the flat one-eyed monster that flew here with the 3 of them on its back. And what made her completely dead was that the girl then walked to her side, lifted her body, and threw herself directly into the mouth of the one-eyed monster with a mouth. The despair at that moment makes my scalp feel numb when I think about it now. Although it is now known which way the girl was letting the terrifying monster heal herself, it is still difficult to erase her psychological shadow on this girl. Yes, at this time Kuina has become a shadow that will never be erased in Crocodile's heart. After all, anyone who is swallowed by a monster and then spit out will not feel very good. Thinking of this, Crocodile didn't say a word, and walked directly towards the back of the restaurant. What he wants to do most now is to stay away from this terrifying girl and wash the mucus on his body by the way. At this time, Robin was just the opposite of Crocodile. At this time, Robin looked at the Zanpakuto meat cough held in Kuina's arms, especially when he thought of the monster form it showed after Shikai. Robin's eyes glowed with love. So cute. Robin's soft sound could not escape Zan Yu's ears. But Nami didn't know good Wang Zhao's situation, just curiously looked at this big sister with outstanding temperament, didn't know what she was talking about. And Kuina, the owner of Meat Cough, also had a strange look after feeling Robin's gaze. Although I don't care about the shape of the meat worm, but such a posture is definitely not the word, cute, right? Zan Yu was so fed up by Robin's words that he almost spit out the drink he just drank. It was only then that he realized that Robin also has a hobby that is extremely fond of large pets, even obsessed. So, even if Ru Nguyen looks like a monster in the eyes of normal people after Shikai, it looks very cute in Robin's eyes. What a strange hobby and brain circuit. Thinking of this, Zan Yu finally couldn't help coughing. Cough cough, Miss Robin, now it's time for us to talk about you. Cough cough Miss Robin, now it's time for us to talk about you. After hearing Zan Yu's words, Robin reluctantly retracted his gaze from the Zanpakuto meat card that Kuina was holding in his arms, then walked to Zan Yu's side, leaned on the bar, and looked at Zan Yu with his arms crossed, opened the mouth. Why, do you really want to recruit me under your command? You know that I'm not good at fighting. Even if, as Crocodile guessed, I really have some kind of heritage, I'm probably some kind of historian. Before Robin could finish his words, Zan Yu interrupted. No, for Sand Crocodile and the others, I take my subordinates, but you are different, Miss Robin. Having said that, Zan Yu stood up, stretched out his right hand towards Robin like a noble boy, and sincerely invited. May I invite you to be my partner, Miss Robin? Nami on one side saw for the first time that Zan Yu, a guy who was gentle on the outside but arrogant on the inside, invited someone so solemnly. His face was full of strange expressions. She didn't understand. What is the point of Zan Yu's seriousness in front of this big sister, who is only Sand Crocodile's secretary? As for Kuina sitting on the other side of Zan Yu, looking at Zan Yu, then looking at Robin. Although I already knew last night that the other person in Zan Yu's heart was Robin, but seeing Zan Yu's actions at this time, he still felt a little envious when he looked at Robin. Unable to help, Kuina couldn't help pouting, then turned her head to eliminate the food in front of her, as if she was venting all the emotions of these items on the food. Seeing the sincere sincerity in Zan Yu's eyes, Robin pursed his lips and said, "You said you know a lot of information before, so you should know my true identity. I am the son of the devil who was offered a bounty of 79 million Bailey by the world government, a remnant of O'Hara. My dream is to read the historical texts scattered all over the sea and find the historical truth that has disappeared for 100 years. It is precisely because of this dream that I came here to join Crocodile's command, and the ultimate goal is to take a look the historical text below this kingdom. I need to travel the whole sea. I'm sorry, I don't have extra time to join you and become your partner to challenge Marine and challenge the world government." After listening to Robin's words, Zan Yu smiled and said, "Miss Robin, you just said that I have a lot of information. Of course, this information also includes 30 historical texts, including 4 historical texts on road signs and 9 historical texts on intelligence. And within the next section, we will also sail on the Grand Line to find other inheritors. During the voyage, we will naturally pass through these places with historical texts." Robin's eyes lit up when he heard the words. Meimu looked at Zan Yu excitedly, and asked, Are you telling the truth?" Seeing Robin's expression, Zan Yu smiled in his heart and said to himself, "It's done." Looking at Robin's excited eyes, Zan Yu nodded and then said, "Of course, I can even tell you now, what is recorded on the historical inscription under the Alabasta Palace." Hearing Zan Yu's words, Robin subconsciously shook his head and stopped. "Don't say it, I will see it myself." After speaking, Robin gritted his teeth and looked at Zan Yu with an expression like, "You've already been hooked, you can't run away." His eyes changed for a while, and finally he breathed a sigh of relief and said helplessly, "Okay, you win." Quote, "I am willing to become the inheritor, become the Dark Moon Knight, and I will ask Lord Lucifer to take care of my mother-in-law in the next journey. So, now, should I also give me that ring and start the contract?" Hearing that Robin finally agreed to join his gang, Zan Yu was also happy in his heart, but on the surface he didn't show anything. However, after hearing Robin's last question, Zan Yu still smiled and said, "Yours is not enough, because the light of inheritance that belongs to you has not been fully awakened. Only after the light of complete inheritance is awakened can you get the inheritance that belongs to you. As for how to wake up, it mainly depends on one's heart and perseverance. Only by recognizing one's heart and persevering without reservation can one be truly determined. However, that's what I said, but how to make up your mind is different for everyone, so I hope that in the next journey, you can find your own way of awakening." Having said that, Zan Yu stretched out his hand again and invited. "So now, can I invite Miss Robin to join us and be our partner for the rest of the voyage?" Seeing the boy who invited him again, Robin suddenly smiled, put his hand on Zan Yu's hand, and said with a smile, "Then, please take care of you in the future." Nami on the side also smiled and looked at Robin when he saw this, and welcomed him. "Welcome to join, let me introduce again, I'm Nami." Kuina also turned around at this time, a friendly smile appeared on her cold and pretty face, looked at Robin and said, "I'm Kuina." However, while talking, after seeing the smile on Zan Yu's face, he couldn't help but reach out and hit Zan Yu hard on the back. Fortunately, Zan Yu was very close to Kuina at this time, so Kuina's small movements were not discovered by Nami and Robin. And Zan Yu, who was being executed, didn't look stiff, and then he could only hold back the chaotic little hands behind him while smiling, as if nothing had happened. Who is to blame for his own sins? However, at this moment, Crocodile finally came out from behind after cleaning, and it was considered to relieve Zan Yu. Kuina looked at Crocodile who came out, and after giving it a savage glance, she took back her little hand without leaving any traces. And Crocodile, who had just walked out, froze when Kuina saw him. Especially when I saw the Zanpakuto in Kuina's arms moving, the shadows from before shrouded my heart again. Crocodile. How did I provoke this lady? Was my earlier decision to join the Dark Moon Knight wrong? Is it urgent to quit now? Zan Yu looked at Crocodile with a stiff expression and a hint of regret on his face, left the place, walked quickly to Crocodile, patted Crocodile on the shoulder, and whispered, "Thank you for clearing the siege just now." When Crocodile heard the words, his face was stunned, followed by a questioning look on his face. Crocodile. I suspect you are playing me. Ignoring Crocodile's questioning look, Zan Yu stretched out his hand and a ring appeared in his hand again. Yes, this is Crocodile's legacy, the star ring. In fact, compared to Vivi, the light of Crocodile's inheritance is completely awakened first. As I said before, the determination to inherit the light depends on the determination to recognize and persevere in one's heart. And a hero like Crocodile, who has been on the sea for many years, has long had the determination to give up everything and fight for his own ambition. The moment Zan Yu saw such a person, the light of inheritance was completely awakened. The moment Crocodile saw the ring, he immediately discarded his previous puzzling and questioning. He grabbed the ring and looked eagerly at the numbers on the ring. The moment he saw this number, Crocodile's heart was half cold. The eagerness and desire on his face were frozen. Zan Yu was not surprised at the change in Crocodile's expression, however, Zan Yu still looked at Crocodile's absent-minded eyes and said, "Are you disappointed?" Hearing Zan Yu's voice, Crocodile immediately woke up and looked up at Zan Yu with a mocking look on his face, as if to say, "I see what else you can say." At the same time, Crocodile's hand holding the ring of inheritance couldn't help rubbing tightly, and there were faint blue veins throbbing on the back of his hand, as if announcing the master's anger. Zan Yu saw Crocodile clenching his fist in his eyes, then his eyes moved to Crocodile's eyes again, and suddenly asked, "Do you know my inheritance ranking? 270, only 3 places higher than you. Then do you know my record from going to sea to the present? Garp the fist can't hurt me, the 4 emperors' red hair has been defeated by me. And, in these 2 battles, I didn't use all my strength." Hearing Zan Yu's words, Crocodile looked surprised. Although he had already received information that Zan Yu had fought with Garp, he just didn't know the specifics. After reading the photos on the intelligence, he thought it was Zan Yu and the 3 who couldn't beat Garp and escaped. Unexpectedly, even marine hero Garp can't help Zan Yu. And what surprised Crocodile the most was that the red-haired Shanks had already played against Zan Yu, and he lost. This incident, there is not the slightest wind in the whole sea. Moreover, is this really something that inheritance can do? When he thought about it like this, he saw that Rockdale's clenched fist was unconsciously loosened, and his expression softened a bit. At this time, Zan Yu continued, "The reason why I say the above is just to tell you that the ranking of inheritance does not represent the ranking of final strength. Inheritance, just thinking of and giving you a new path to become stronger, and the power you accept inheritance is only the beginning of real growth. How far you can grow in the end depends on the individual. I'm not afraid to tell you that among these inheritances, the weakest, ranked 300th, the strength they represent can also reach the level of Admiral of Headquarters. Now, tell me, your choice." Taking a sip of the cigar, Crocodile finally put the inheritance star ring on the fingers of his left hand, took a step back, bowed and raised his left hand, looked at Zan Yu and said, "I, Crocodile, are willing to accept the inheritance, join the Dark Moon Knight, and live forever without violating this oath." Then, I saw a ray of light gushing out from the inheritance star ring, surrounded by Crocodile. After a few seconds, the light dissipated. Crocodile then stood up straight, looked at Zan Yu and said, "Lu Cypher, I'm actually more interested in the 0 ring in your hands, don't lose it to others before I take it from you." Hearing this, Zan Yu showed a confident and arrogant smile on his face, looked at Crocodile and said, "If you have the strength, come and try it." After speaking, Zanyu suddenly stretched out his right hand, and placed his index finger between Crocodile's eyebrows. The dazzling light has risen again. However, before Zanyu saw that Crocodile was about to faint, he waved his left hand and an ice seat appeared out of nowhere behind Crocodile, which prevented Crocodile from falling directly to the ground. After all, Crocodile doesn't want Vivi, and no one will take the initiative to exchange support. At the same time, Zanyu's mind also entered his mind and once again said to the system, "System, call up Crocodile and his heritage hero information." Then, a virtual panel unfolded in Zanyu's mind. Air 4, Crocodile. Age, 44 years old. Heritage heroes. Sandstorm, Gaara. Hero ranking, 274th. Ability, Half-Tailed Beast. Half-tailed beastization refers to obvious changes in the body, but still maintains a humanoid state. Skill inheritance, 0% to 100%. 2 complete tail beastization. Completely changed to the form of one-tail show crane, which can release empty bombs and tailed beast bomb. Skill inheritance, 0% to 100%. 3. Tailed beast bomb. It is made of yin and yang chakra compressed into a spherical shape at a ratio of 2:8, and it is so powerful that it can cause landslides and earth cracks. Skill inheritance, 0% to 100%. 4. Wind-style sand shot. The wind-style ninjutsu used by Gaara in a non-Jinchuriki state and Shukaku together, strengthens the attack power of sand bullets through the wind and penetrates the opponent's body, but the real purpose is to bury the sand in the opponent's body instead of causing damage. Suppresses the opponent's movement from the opponent's body. Skill inheritance, 0% to 100%. 5th, the Spear of the Crane. Skill inheritance, 100%. 6th, the Shield of the Crane. Skill inheritance, 100%. 7. Ninjutsu of Sand. Skill inheritance, 100%. Hero inheritance, 100% of 40%. Current strength, equal to Marine Supplementary Admiral to surpass Marine Admiral's strength. Reminder, Tail Beast, one-tail show crane has not received it. Quote, the magical operation of the system, the Sengoku for hands-on. What? Seeing that the skill inheritance rate and hero inheritance rate appearing on the interface are actually arranged this time, instead of directly showing specific values like before himself, Kuina, Nami, and Vivi, Zanyu couldn't help but feel a little puzzled and coughed softly. And, most importantly, what is the situation with the tailed beast, Shuhei? This thing can be listed separately like weapons and objects, instead of being directly transformed into ability seeds together with the inheritance and integrated into Crocodile's body. The system may have sensed Zanyu's doubts, so he directly explained. It's also a special case. In the inheritance of this hero, because there are 2 wills in the body at the same time, and the difference in strength is not too big, the system will randomly select one of the 373 inherited together as the inheritor's main inheritance and the other one. The will body will be separated and kept in the form of items to be claimed by the inheritor. Quote, however, even if the 2 wills are separated, they still belong to the same heritage hero in the system's assessment. So in order to obtain all the inheritance degrees, the inheritor needs to obtain the approval of 2 wills at the same time. And the number 4 inheritor in front of me is very suitable for the inheritance of wills randomly selected by the system, and has obtained all the inheritance of this part of the will, so the inheritance of heroes is 40% doubtful. If you want to get the remaining 60%, the inheritor needs to get the approval of another part of the will. Only then will the hero's inheritance degree be improved according to the degree of approval. That is to say, how much the inheritor's next inheritance limit is, all of which are based on the approval of another part of the will. Hearing this, Zanyu's brows twitched, as if he had thought of some interesting picture, and then asked. That is to say, the system now seems to be able to have a good understanding of Zanyu. Facing Zanyu's unclear question, he directly replied. That is to say, if the remaining part of the will fully recognizes the inheritor does not need any effort, and all inheritances can reach 100%. If the remaining part of the will is not recognized or the degree of recognition is not complete, then no matter how hard the inheritor tries, the degree of inheritance will stop at the recognized level, and there will be no further increase. Of course, these are only for inheritance, and will not have any impact on the inheritor's own cultivation in the future. After listening to the system's description, Zhan Yu couldn't help giving a thumbs up to the system in his heart and praised. What an amazing operation. Meanwhile, Marineford, Naval Headquarters. In the conference hall, Sengoku, who was sitting in the main seat, looked down at Garp, Crane Vice Admiral, Akainu, Kayabu, Ghost Spider, Doberman and other high-level Naval Headquarters Vice Admiral and above, and then turned his head to look aside. The Crane Vice Admiral asked, "Xiaohei, where is Aokiji now? Why didn't you contact him?" Hearing this, Vice Admiral, who was sitting on one side, looked at Sengoku and explained. Qingshong was ordered to protect Lam Scott's parade for the first half of his route a few days ago, and he has no time to come to this meeting for the time being. Hearing this, Sengoku nodded, then looked at everyone with a solemn expression, and said. Everyone must have heard of several things that have happened at sea recently. Road Cipher Zhan Yu, Dark Moon 12 Riders. In just 2 months of appearing on the sea has already been stirred up with turbulent waves. Especially a month ago, in the battle with the 7 warlords of the sea, the Dark Moon's first rider, the peerless sword girl Kuina, not only captured the world's largest swordsman, but also sank the entire Whiskey Peak. This is not only a provocation and irony to the 7 warlords of the sea system set up by the world government, but also a destruction of the peace of the sea. The most important thing is that Zhan Yu and his group are growing so fast. If they continue to develop, they will most likely be the next Rocks pirate. Even, it is really possible that if Lucifer initially announced to this sea, he will become a group of evil gods standing on the heads of all the people of the sea. Hearing Sengoku mentioning Rocks pirate, everyone's expression changed. For the tyranny and terror of the Rocks pirate, it has been almost 40 years since then. Those Vice Admiral who experienced that incident, Admiral is still unforgettable. And now watching Sengoku even compare the Dark Moon Night with only 3 people to Rocks, or even surpass Rocks, everyone's faces are a little unbelievable. However, when I think of Cypher, who is now known to be able to draw the Garp Vice Admiral who defeated Rocks back then, Hawkeye said that his swordsmanship far surpassed that of a great swordsman a month ago. Gee, and the last elf of the Dark Moon, the second Thunder Knight, who could easily defeat Bogart, the backup admiral's strength. Everyone was shocked to discover that in terms of top combat power, no 4 Emperor's forces in the New World at this moment could compete with Dark Moon Knight. Then they had to accept this incredible fact. The Dark Moon Knight has really begun to develop towards the original Rocks pirate level. Sengoku looked at the group of people below, and even Kizaru, who used to be sloppy in the past, became serious before continuing. Therefore, we must take measures now to check and balance these criminals. We must not let them develop, otherwise no one will really be able to stop them. The sea at that time will fall into true despair. Yesterday, we received a report from Marine Base in the Alabasta branch, saying that the 3 of Lucifer had appeared in the Alabasta capital, and the Shichibukai Sand Crocodile had already asked our Marine for help. Although we don't know the specific purpose of the Road Cipher and the 3 of them going to Alabasta, no matter what it is, we can't let him achieve it. And arrest them all. And the world government is also very concerned about this matter, so it ordered that we must arrest or kill all these 3 daring people this time. For this reason, the world government is worried about the combat strength of our Marine headquarters, and specially sent people to assist us. Saying that, Sengoku introduced a middle-aged man in a black suit to a senior Marine who stood up and said, "This is an official from the CP0 organization sent by the world government, code name, SHIELD." However, in the face of Sengoku's introduction, SHIELD just glanced at the Marines present, and didn't say much, as if he was very disdainful of Marine. Looking at this CPP's attitude, many of the hawkish senior leaders in Marine, headed by Sakazuki, became a little angry, and looked at the SHIELD angrily. Even some dovish and mild Marine generals were a little bit at this time bad looking at the SHIELD. However, in the face of the angry gazes of the Marine executives, SHIELD's expression did not change in the slightest, as if he directly ignored the anger of these people. Even Sengoku was slightly annoyed at the sight of such a SHIELD that didn't give himself the face of martial Marine. However, seeing that the situation was about to escalate, Sengoku seemed to hold back his anger and clapped his hands to attract the attention of the Marines. Okay, now let's arrange the specific combat power layout. First of all, in order to ensure the safety of the headquarters, this time, I, Xiaohei, will guard the naval headquarters to prevent other criminals. Hearing Sengoku's words, all the Marines nodded in agreement. The shield standing on Sengoku's side frowned, but in the end he didn't say much. And Sengoku then ordered. At the same time, this time, there are only 3 opponents, but these 3 are at least admiral level strength of the headquarters, so this time, Garp, Sakazuki, Pulsalino, you 3 will be the main battle. At the same time, the 5 of you, Ghost Spider, Doberman, Huo Shaoshan, Whispering Rat, and Stallo Berry also brought their own fleets to support them. The rest of the others, keep half of them guarding the headquarters, and at the same time, in case of emergency, the others led their fleets to the G5 branch. We must ensure that while capturing Lu Cypher and the 3, we try our best to ensure the stability of the sea. When Sengoku was issuing a series of orders, the shield standing on the side stepped forward to interrupt Sengoku and said, "No." Before leaving behind Sengoku and Crane, everyone else must go to Alabasta and kill the 3 of Lu Cypher. Sengoku looked at the shield that had directly interrupted his order this time, and his expression turned completely cold. "Shield, you know, this is naval headquarters. And first a martial marine. I'm the one who gave the order." However, in the face of Sengoku's anger, Shield just gave Sengoku a contemptuous look, and then said, "You are still nothing more than a department under the world government. And this time, I am here to represent the incomparably honorable Lord Celestial Dragons. For the fact that these 3 criminals who provoke the majesty of Celestial Dragons are still alive on the sea, Celestial Dragons adults have had serious doubts and disappointments about your Marine's ability. That's why this is specially made. 3 members of RCP-0 are hereby sent to assist you. The damage to the majesty of the Celestial Dragons is the real top priority. As for the other pariahs on the sea, how many can die in such a short time? Besides, after death, can't you still live? What's the big deal?" After saying that, Shield no longer continued with the increasingly ugly expressions on the faces of the Marines. "Don't you naval headquarters have a predecessor Admiral Zephyr? This time take him with you. Although it's old, at least it can still be used as a cannon fodder." Just as the shield's voice fell, a fist bigger than sand glass suddenly appeared in front of him, before the shield could react. Boom! Shield's body was punched directly to the wall of the conference hall, and then the entire wall was directly smashed out of a human-shaped hole, and the shield's body was also smashed out. In the Hall of Understanding, all the high-ranking Marine generals looked at Garp, who appeared in front of the shield, with one hand clasping his nose and the other clenching his fist, and they all praised in their hearts. "Beautiful work." Even Sakazuki, who had never dealt with Garp very much, had a smile on his square face. Kizaru next to Sakazuki even cut his nails and said with a crooked mouth, "Cough, cough, it's really scary." It's no wonder that at this moment, all the Marines will understand such a common enemy. After all, everyone in this group of people guards their own justice in their hearts. Although there is absolute justice, lazy justice, sloppy justice, etc., but regardless of their justice, there is no doubt that each of them has their own perseverance in their hearts. And what Shield said just now, almost directly threw the justice in everyone's heart on the ground in front of everyone, and by the way, he stepped on both feet. How infuriating this is. In addition, all the people present are almost not old friends of former Admiral Zephyr, or students of Zephyr. Although some people do not have such strong affection for Zephyr, they are still their teachers anyway. To speak so openly in front of a group of students and old friends to let Zephyr be cannon fodder is to take their face seriously. No wonder people are so angry this time. "Garp!" Sengoku shouted at Garp, but the admiration in those eyes almost overflowed. Hearing Sengoku's shout, Garp also retracted his fist at this time, laughed and said embarrassedly, Sorry, ha ha ha." While Garp was laughing, a gust of wind blew through, and the shield appeared in front of Garp intact, staring at Garp with fire-breathing eyes, shouting angrily. "Garp, what do you mean by that punch just now? Are you dissatisfied with the decision of the world government and the Celestial Dragons? Or are you planning to betray Marine and the world government?" Garp buttoned his nose with no regard for the shield that buckled his hat, and said nothing. "Ah, it's not as complicated as you think. Just now, it was just that the old man's fist was a little itchy and wanted to hit someone, and you happened to be in an excellent position, and this old man took your punch. Of course, if you want to beat the old man with your fist, the old man doesn't really mind." Looking at Garp, who looks like a hob, the blue veins on Shield's forehead are violent, and his fists are clenched tightly. His eyes are almost spitting fire. However, for this reason, the shield still did not move. After all, the strength represented by the 4 characters of Hero Garp is far from being shaken by oneself. At this point, even the shield whose eyes are higher than the top still understands this truth. Looking at the shield that couldn't get off the table at all, Sengoku finally spoke to ease the atmosphere of the scene, saying, "Okay, Marine's military deployment will be carried out according to the order that the old man just gave. Although Lu Cypher is indeed very strong, but at the same time dispatched 2 Admiral of Headquarters, a Marine Hero, 5 Marine Vice Admiral with top strength, 3 CPOs, and 7 Warlords of the Sea who asked for help. Crocodile, this kind of combat power, even to destroy a 4 Emperor's force is enough. Although Lu Cypher and his party are strong in potential, but at the moment, there are only 3 of them. Such combat power is enough." After listening to Sengoku's words, Dun couldn't help snorting coldly. HMPH. Sengoku, this is an order you insisted on. If this mission fails, I will see how you will explain to the 5 elders and celestial dragons. After speaking, the shield turned around and left the place that made him humiliated. Sengoku, Garp, and other high-ranking marine generals didn't pay much attention to Shield's departure. Sengoku finally looked at the crowd, got up and said, "Okay, the arrangement is here, and you will start your respective tasks immediately. Set off immediately. For justice." Hearing this, the marine generals suddenly stood up and shouted in unison, "Yes, for justice." On the other side, Zanyu took Kuina, Nami, and Robin under the numb gazes of the residents of Alabasta, condensed an ice dragon, flew into the sky, and left the capital again. "Hey, this time it's an ice dragon. Yeah, I thought it was the flat monster from last time." "Yes it is." Zanyu and the others did not know that the frequent big actions of himself and others had tempered the courage of the residents of Alabasta countless times, and now they are able to face the ice dragon that covers the sky without incident, otherwise you will be dumbfounded. A few minutes later, the ice dragon had taken everyone to the depths of the desert, and then Zanyu was relieved of the power of ice and dissipated. At this time, Kuina, Nami, and Robin all looked at Zanyu curiously, and finally the more lively Nami said, "Hey, Zanyu, what are you bringing us here to see? It's so hot here, my skin is a little sunburned." Zanyu was talking, turning his head to look at Nami, speechless. "You're a Logia capable, your skin is wrinkled by the sun." Nami heard the words and hummed unhappily. HMPH, you can't coax girls at all, idiot. When Kuina and Luo Bing next to Nami heard the words, they all looked at them with a bit of amusing. Especially Robin, she didn't expect that the second rider of the Dark Moon, who is famous in the sea recently, has a personality like a little girl, and Zanyu, who is hailed by everyone in the sea as Cypher, is actually so gentle. After a short contact, Zanyu left only one image for himself, that is, your son. It is completely in line with some words such as domineering, brutality, and killing without blinking in the sea. This made Robin even more curious about the young man in front of him, and Chunin couldn't help muttering, "What kind of person are you?" As for Zanyu, after hearing Nami's complaints, he chose to ignore it. Looking at the 3 girls, Zanyu said mysteriously, "Kuina and Nami have accepted the inheritance, and now they know the concept of all worlds. As for you, Robin, you will understand when you accept the inheritance in the future. However, today I'll let you take a look at the intelligent creatures of other worlds." Robin, other worlds, Kuina, Nami, intelligent creatures from other worlds. Looking at the 3 girls in shock, Zanyu didn't say much, and chose to receive, Tailed Beast, One-Tail Shuhei, directly from the system. In time, under the shocking gazes of Kuina, Nami, and Robin, a colorful light group shot directly from Zanyu's eyebrows and landed in the desert far away. Immediately afterwards, the colorful light group began to expand and became larger and larger, until it looked like a big mountain. The light group stopped and continued to grow. Then, the colorful light group began to dissipate gradually after a burst of shape changes, and what was revealed was a civet cat-like monster with a long tail and mysterious purple-black lines all over its body. But at this time its eyes were tightly closed. So big. Looks great. So cute. In an instant, Zanyu, Nami, and Kuina all turned their heads to look at Robin, who looked up at Shuhei with a look of joy. At this time, they were all too lazy to complain. And just as the three women's voice fell, Shuhei's tightly closed eyes suddenly opened, and a burst of surprise and hostility erupted from his eyes at the same time. Ahahaha, Lord Shuhei, I finally came out again. Sand Ninja, Sunagaker, Master, I have already killed you all this time. You guys are waiting for my revenge. Hey, where is this place? Why can't I feel the breath of chakra? Could it be that this is some kind of enchantment space that seals off chakra? Who, Sand Ninja, what kind of tricks do you want to play? But, do you think this can restrain the uncle? Delusion, look at the trick. Wind-style infinite bomb. If it takes time, Shuhei seems to have turned into a war fortress with infinite firepower, and is madly firing empty bombs in all directions. Good Jiao Jiao. Immediately, with the sound of roars, the entire desert set off a monstrous sand wave. There is even more yellow sand splashing in the sky, blocking the scorching sun, and this desert is directly shrouded in shadows. The funny thing is that the four Zanyu were standing at the feet of Shohei, so none of these empty bullets were fired at the four Zanyu, so the four Zanyu even avoided the defense. And Shuhei, it would be like a battle of wits and courage with the air, it's really cute. PFF'd. After finally reacting, he couldn't help but burst out laughing. Ha ha ha, this big guy is so funny. What the hell is he doing now? Robin went on to analyze. According to what it said just now, it should be dealing with an imaginary enemy, but, what a terrifying strength. Kuina finally added, it doesn't feel very smart. And Zanyu was speechless and gave Shuhei a kick, scolded with a smile, shut up. There is no sand ninja here. Shokaku, who was still in Dafa Kamui, suddenly heard the sound from under his feet, and jumped back subconsciously, jumping directly to 100 meters away. This is a nimble fat man. Although this fat civet cat finally landed, it was another smash of sand and dust. The three girls, Kuina, Nami, and Robin, were a little surprised when they looked at Shuhei, who jumped out of 100 meters in an instant, with different expressions on their faces. And at this time, if I want to say the most different, it is the big guy Shuhei. Especially when he looked at Zanyu and several people in front of him, he couldn't help but exclaimed in surprise. Huh, four ordinary humans with no chakra on them. No wonder I didn't find it just now. Scared grandpa. Zanyu listened to Shohei's self-talk, and his heart suddenly became happy. This guy, he was frightened just now, and then jumped a lot. Hey, Shuhei, can you get smaller? It's so tall that I have to raise my head to talk to you. It's very troublesome. Hearing Zanyu's words, even though Shuhei's eyes flashed fiercely, there was a look of curiosity and interest in the depths of his eyes. What's going on with this human being? Even knowing the reputation of the uncle, how dare he speak to the uncle so calmly? It's obviously just an ordinary person who doesn't have the slightest chakra fluctuation in his body. It was completely puzzled in its heart, but it still decided to scare this ordinary person first, and then slaughter it. It wants the world to know that it is not a good character to talk about, Master Shuhei. Thinking like this, Shohei didn't say a word, just opened his mouth to face Zanyu and roared. Roar. Suddenly, a huge roar rushed towards Zanyu frantically with countless air waves and dust. Looking at this scene, Zanyu didn't have the slightest nervousness on his face and said to himself. It seems that this little civet cat needs some training. While speaking, Zanyu waved his hand, and a huge ice wall appeared out of nowhere, directly blocking Zanyu, Kuina Ahat, Nami, and Robin. The air wave carried the sand and dust directly and hit the almost transparent huge parallel wall, but it only left some scratches on the parallel wall. Other than that, the ice wall did not change. Shuhei, who was on the side, saw this scene and said in surprise. Ice Shield Ninjutsu, are you the ninja of the Kurigakure Mizutsuki clan? Is it possible to deceive this uncle's perception of chakra? When did the Shui Wuyu family appear such a young powerhouse? The old monk Fenfu didn't tell me. Zanyu, who was about to start, heard Shohei's last words and couldn't help but froze for a moment. Sharing the blessings. Isn't that the previous Jinchuriki of Shozuru? How can I listen to Shukaku's words? It seems that I don't know Gaara. Otherwise, he won't either. Huh, no, this guy Shuhei just said the Shui Wuyu family. Listening to the meaning of this, it seems that the Shui Wuyu family still exists. For a moment, Zanyu seemed to have figured out something, looked up at Shohei, and asked. Crane, how many times has the ninja world gone through wars in the ninja world now? Hearing Zanyu's question, Shohei's bulging eyes were obviously stunned, and then he violently raised his hands. As a ninja, you ask me how many ninja wars I've experienced. Are you humiliating this uncle? Death to this uncle, tailed beast bomb. Suddenly, Shuhei raised his head and opened his mouth, and a purple-black energy ball slowly formed in Shuhei's mouth. Feeling the terrifying and tyrannical energy group in Shuhei's mouth, Nami's expression changed, and even Kuina's expression was a little serious at this time. At this time, the weakest Robin's face was a little pale. It's not that Robin is timid, but the body's natural response when faced with a huge threat to life. The changed Kuina and then discovered Robin's strangeness and even came to Robin to block the pressure for Robin. Seeing this scene, Robin's heart seemed to be touched. The pale complexion had gradually returned to rosy, and those beautiful eyes were indeed slightly moist. Looking at the backs of Kuina and Nami standing in front of him, and Zanyu standing at the front, Robin couldn't help but muttered in his heart for a while. Saul, maybe, I really found the partner you mentioned. Standing in front of the three women, Zanyu snapped his fingers as he watched Shohei, who was about to rally tailed beast bomb without saying a word. Immediately, the ice wall that was blocking the front of the crowd turned into ice debris, and then gasified under the high temperature of the desert. It seems that if you want to get information from your mouth, you need to take care of you first. While speaking, Shuhei's tailed beast bomb had already frozen and threw it directly towards Zanyu and the others. Seeing this, Zanyu stretched out his right arm and aimed at the tailed beast bomb shot, shouting loudly. Ice Blue Dragon. Roar. It took time. A ferocious ice dragon with a length of 1,000 meters came out of Zanyu's head directly out of thin air. After roaring up to the sky, he opened his mouth and swallowed the tailed beast bomb directly into his belly. And after entering the belly of the Ice Emperor Dragon, the tailed beast bomb is directly condensed together with the air and even the time and space. At this moment, Zanyu looked at the scene in front of him in amazement, as if he couldn't accept Shohei. The corner of his mouth curled into a black smile, and then said softly. Go with. In an instant, the Ice Kang Emperor Dragon, which is even bigger than Shuhei, flew directly in front of Shuhei at an extremely fast speed, and then tied Shuhei's body directly like a 2-meter snake wrapped around an old hen. However, unlike the snake, the Ice Blue Emperor Dragon has 9 powerful dragon claws. At this time, it is grabbing Shuhei's body fiercely. Until then, Shuhei, who was firmly controlled by the Ice Emperor Dragon, couldn't move, did he react, and he couldn't even think about why his tailed beast bomb didn't explode, and roared at Zanyu in the distance. It's stinky fool. Let go of this uncle. Otherwise, this uncle will definitely swallow you in one bite. Stinky fool. While Shohei was swearing, Zanyu's body instantly disappeared from the spot and appeared directly on Shohei's head. He swung the fist of armament Haki, who was cold and wrapped in black, and hit the head of Morizaru under his feet with a savage punch. I make you stink. Puff. The moment Zanyu slammed down with armament Haki's fist, the place where the top of Crane's head was hit instantly turned into sand, and then it returned to normal. Seeing this scene, Zanyu's eyes flashed a strange color. My own armament Haki doesn't work for this stuff. And at this moment, I heard the crane guard Zhang Juji's laugh at his feet. Ahahaha, my uncle's body is a combination of infinite chakra and wind and sand. You want to hurt me with your fist? Ha 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 ha. Zanyu didn't care about Shohei's ridicule, and from Shohei's words, he instantly understood the reason for his failure to be armed. Armament Haki is a kind of taijutsu in this world. The reason why it can deal with Logia Devil Fruit abilities is probably because there is a certain relationship between this taijutsu and Devil Fruit. As for this guy, Shuhei, its body is originally made of sandstorms, not the power in Devil Fruit, so in the face of this guy's desertification, just using armament Haki can't really hurt him. Thinking of this, Zanyu not only didn't get angry, but there was even a hint of joy on his face. This also means that if there is no special means, this guy, Shuhei, will be able to run wild in this world with only his ability to transform into sand. After all, there is no such thing as ceiling in this world. However, unfortunately, the special means, I just happen to have it. After whispering something softly, Zanyu shouted softly. Ice wings. 2 ice crystal wings appeared behind Zan Yu and flew directly into the air with Zan Yu. Stopping in the air in front of Shohei, Zan Yu looked at Shohei, who was still grinning at him even though he couldn't move, and chuckled lightly. "You just said, I'm not self-sufficient." Saying that, Zan Yu snapped his fingers again, and then Shohei saw the ice dragon that was wrapped around his body suddenly rise up, facing his head. Then suddenly opened his mouth, and then the tailed beast bomb, which had just been swallowed, slowly spat out. Watching this scene, Shuhei's souls are all gone. Although ordinary fists are useless to me, this is my tailed beast bomb. As soon as the tailed beast bomb comes down, you will definitely die for a while. However, before Shuhei could ask for mercy, tailed beast bomb was spit out by the ice dragon at Shuhei's head. Shuhei watched the tailed beast bomb hit him in the head and let out a cry of despair. However, when the tailed beast bomb smashed into Shuhei's head, it was like a cloud of dust, and it scattered. It just gave Shuhei's nose a color. At this time, Shuhei was opening his mouth wide, his face blank. In addition to the nose dyed with purple-black by the tailed beast bomb just now, it looks extra cute. So cute. +3. In the distance, Kuina, Nami, Robin said in unison. At this time, Zan Yu, who was flying in the air, looked at the stunned Shohei and introduced with a smile. "Shuhei, this move I just made is called the Ice Blue Emperor Dragon. It is one of the powerful tricks that gathers the inner force of the universe. It is used to destroy and swallow force. That is to say, in theory, any form of life and energy that is swallowed by the Ice Azure Emperor Dragon will be directly condensed. As for the end result, just like that tailed beast bomb." Having said this, Zan Yu's face suddenly showed a very kind smile. Under the somewhat frightened eyes of Shuhei, he snapped his fingers again. In time, at Zan Yu's feet, an ice dragon nearly 10 times bigger than the ice dragon wrapped around Shokrei's body appeared out of thin air. The body that seemed to be able to cover the sky hovered in the sky, and the light of the entire desert dimmed in an instant. The dragon head, which is the size of Shuhei's body, surrendered to Zan Yu's feet, and then there was a huge roar at Shuhei. "Receive." At this time, Shuhei finally understood a sentence, that is, feng shui turns. Looking at this ice dragon whose size was more than 10 times his size, Shuhei was instantly honest, and his small eyes were full of fear. At this time, Zan Yu's voice like a whisper of a demon came over again. "I said, Shohei, do you think the frozen emperor dragon under my feet can swallow you whole? You said that if you swallowed it, would you die?" Zan Yu's words were like the last straw that broke the camel's back. At the moment when the words fell, Shohei screamed. "My uncle admits defeat. My uncle admits defeat. Just say what you want to do, and this uncle promises you. Hurry up and put this thing away." When he shouted, Shuhei's small eyes were full of fear and grievance. "What the hell are you doing? Can't this uncle promise you?" Watching this second become cowardly, surrender directly, and show Crane, who has no tailed beast, Zan Yu is also happy. Then he jumped up and flew directly in front of Shuhei, saying, "Can you get smaller now?" While speaking, Zan Yu waved his hand and released the ice dragon wrapped around Shohei's body. At this moment, Shohei looked at Zan Yu as if he was looking at an evil spirit. After hearing Zan Yu's words, without saying a word, the body that was the size of Shan Yi shrunk sharply, and in a blink of an eye it became the size of a house cat. Watching this scene, Zan Yu also waved away the giant ice dragon behind him and landed on the ground at the same time. Looking at the trumpet Shuhei in front of him, Zan Yu directly squatted down, stretched out his right hand, and said with a smile, "Come on, let me touch my head." Hearing Zan Yu's rude request, Shohei just wanted to get angry, but after seeing Zan Yu's smiling expression, he suddenly did it again. He dragged his chubby body and put his head in Zan Yu's palm with an aggrieved face, letting Zan Yu ravage him. "How many lifetimes of blood mold did it take for me to encounter such a devil when I just regained my freedom? If I knew this was the case, it would be better to stay in the old monk's body honestly, and at least be able to retain the last trace of dignity as a tailed beast. I don't want to live as a pet now." Thinking of this, Shuhei was so aggrieved that he almost cried. Quadruple A. Zan Yu was directly amused by Shohei's aggrieved expression, and then said with a smile, "Okay Shuhei, don't look so wronged, this is not the world you used to be. In this world, no one will seal you again. Furthermore, This time I found you a partner who is very compatible with your abilities, you should get along well in the future, you know. Saying that, Zanyu touched Shohei's hand with a faint chill. The next day, in the hotel. Wow, so cute. It looks so small now, such a cute little guy, who would have thought that the main body would actually be such a big guy. Let me touch it, let me touch it. Don't suffer lousy. Hey, it's not right to swear. Shuhei, you're not good. At this time, Nami, Robin, and Vivi are squeezed in the middle. You pinch, I pull, and even Kuina carries her long tail from time to time. The trumpet Shuhei can be said to be crying without tears. It even felt that these human women were even more evil than the evil ghost Zanyu. For a time, Shuhei was envious of the other self. Why can another uncle be able to follow the sand crocodile in a dashing manner and be free? My uncle will be devastated here. How can it be repaired? If I hadn't been able to defeat that Sanchichi, evil ghost, this uncle would have slipped away. With such a beautiful new world, this uncle can only be a pet now. How can it be repaired? Yes, Shuhei, who was held by the girls in front of him at this time, was actually only a part of his body. The cause of the incident was that when he was educated by Zanyu yesterday, he became smaller and followed Zanyu to see the girls, and the girls were instantly captured by Shohei's cute appearance. After hearing Zanyu said that Shuhei would follow Crocodile in the future, all of them were suddenly full of reluctance. And Zanyu looked at the girls with reluctant expressions, thought about it, and finally thought that 9 tails in the original book could be divided into 2, and at that time, Zanyu also remembered one thing. The tailed beast is transformed by the yin and yang escape, just like the 9 tails in the original book, which can split the 2 parts of the yin and yang attributes. The Shuhei, who is also the tailed beast, should be able to do the same. Then Zanyu smiled again at the trumpet Shuhei, who was at his feet, and spoke his thoughts. Forced by Zanyu's arrogance. In the end, Shuhei could only hold back his tears and split into 2. It's like the dignity of the tailed beast that everyone in the entire ninja world fears, once again shattered in the hands of this evil ghost. Zanyu chose to ignore Shuhei's grievance, and then sent the 2 Shuhei to the hotel, and then sent Shuhei transformed by yin chakra to Crocodile who fainted. The yang Shuhei became the present. Such a situation. However, some surprises are that the yin attribute Shuhei was originally somewhat resistant to following a human in the future, but after seeing the tragic end of the yang attribute Shuhei in the hands of the girls, he directly chose to enter Crocodile's body. Killing does not appear in the presence of Nami and others. At the same time, he felt inexplicably glad that he could follow Crocodile freely at this time. It is precisely because of this that Crocodile's final fit with the heritage hero directly reached 100% by such a coincidence. Just when Shohei was about to cry, he just saw Zanyu and Crocodile walk in one after the other. Watching this scene, Shohei's eyes lit up, his round body suddenly escaped from the girls with force, jumped on Zanyu's shoulder, then looked at Crocodile and shouted. Hey, another me, you come out, let's change, I want to stay in this guy's body. The voice of Shuhei standing on Zanyu's shoulder just fell, and the yin attribute Shuhei appeared directly. Above Crocodile's head, he glanced at the yang attribute Shuhei mockingly, and said. Thinking beautiful. However, just when the yin-type Shuhei was about to say something, he suddenly saw the figures of Kuina, Nami, Robin, and Vivi walking over, his expression changed, and he directly retracted into Crocodile's body again. Seeing this scene, he originally planned to catch Shuhei with the yin attribute and take good care of him. Nami, who was fond of him, couldn't help but feel a little disappointed, and then once again looked at the yang attribute Shuhei, who was trembling on Zanyu's shoulder, and said. What are you running? Come and play with us, Xiao Shuhei. However, upon hearing Nami's words, Shuhei, who was standing on Zanyu's shoulders, grabbed Zanyu's clothes with all his limbs, his round head shaking like a rattle. Seeing that Shuhei was frightened by Nami's girls, he didn't even have the majesty of a tailed beast, and even looked like a house cat. Zanyu also smiled and patted Shuhei's head, then looked at Nami and said. Okay, Nami, let's give it a break, let's talk about where we're going next. All the girls said that. At this time, they also looked serious, looked at Zanyu, and waited for Zanyu's plan. Seeing this, Zanyu nodded, then gestured to Crocodile behind him. Yes, Mr. Road Cipher. Having said that, Crocodile stepped forward with a cigar in his mouth, looked at the crowd and said, Lord Lucifer discussed with me just now, and felt that since we intend to form a force that is superior to the entire world, first of all, we need to have our own base, and Alabasta can just become one of our bases. Looking at Crocodile, who had completely surrendered after learning the news of Wanji and the power he gained at this time, Zan Yu nodded in his heart. Afterwards, Zan Yu also looked at Vivi and said, Since you were sworn in as a Dark Moon Knight yesterday, then this country has already stood on the opposite side of world government. Also, about the fact that there is an ancient weapon Pluton in Alabasta, the world government has long known about it. Before they didn't do it, it was mainly because of your ancestors' identity that made them have scruples, but now, Master has news of Pluton, coupled with the matter of becoming a Dark Moon Knight, they will never let you go, or even this country. Of course, now you actually already have the strength to surpass Admiral, and as the Dark Moon Knight, we also stand behind you. Alabasta already has the strength to not be afraid of the world government and marine. Vivi listened to Zan Yu's words, nodded solemnly, and said, I understand, and, as the Crown Prince, I also have the responsibility and obligation to make my country stronger under the premise of having the power to protect itself. Zan Yu looked at the firmness in Vivi's eyes and the gleam of ambition, and after a moment of stunned, he nodded with relief. Then he went on to say, You can think so, it's better, and, next, in order to make Alabasta have a stronger armed force, I decided to let Crocodile stay here to practice armament hockey and observation hockey first, and at the same time divide a few sand in Alabasta. Let them teach a group of ninjas, used to guard this place, and at the same time, develop the entire kingdom of Alabasta into a powerful force under our Dark Moon Knight organization. However, you still need to discuss this matter with your father. Hearing this, Vivi glanced at Crocodile in disbelief, then nodded in agreement. Seeing this, Zan Yu turned to look at the three daughters of Kuina, Nami, and Robin, and said, And we need to continue to embark on a voyage to a place that can be the headquarters of our organization, a symbol of our organization. Since we want to surpass all living beings, then we can't be weak. Before, we only had 3 people, so there was no need to think about it at that time, but now, the 12 Knights of the Dark Moon have grown to 5 people, so this matter must be considered. Having said that, Zan Yu looked at Robin and continued. And there also happens to be a piece of historical text. In the afternoon, on the beach near the capital port of Alabasta, Vivi and Crocodile watched the distant warship and remained silent. Crocodile, who was wearing a black fur coat and finally had a lit cigar in his mouth, glanced at Vivi, who looked a little sad around him, and said, What's the matter? Are you worried about something? Hearing Crocodile's low voice, Vivi directly put away the expression on his face, and then chuckled. No, I'm just wondering if the Sky Island that Lord Cypher said really exists, and how did he know that Sky Island is above Gaia Island? Crocodile didn't care about Vivi's perfunctory words, and after taking a sip of the cigar, he said, Mr. Lucifer is a very mysterious being, maybe as he said, he knows everything. Saying that, Crocodile suddenly said, If you are worried about Alabasta's safety, you don't have to. If you really encounter an unsolvable enemy, the Inheritance Star Ring in our hands can ask them for help at any time. With the transmission power of the Inheritance Star Ring, they can be summoned in an instant. However, compared to this, I actually want to suggest that you make an early decision about Alabasta's future. After accepting the information of inheritance, you should already know the information of Wanji. However, compared with the fact that you only know the information of Wanji, and because of the crane in my body, I have a clear understanding of another world that is completely different from ours. From Shuhei's words, I came to an astonishing conclusion, that during the time we were talking, there were countless worlds developing outside our world. Do you know what this means? It means that the information we know about the world is not just a story recorded in books, but is actually developing. And since Mr. Lucifer can let us have these inheritances, then I have a 100% certainty that in the future, he will go to these countless worlds. And our world is probably just him as the starting point before he enters the world. I don't believe that a character like him would be willing to stay in a world and rule the world. Speaking of which, I thought that the king of the gods in his mouth became a supreme existence in this world, but now it seems that becoming the king of the gods may be his true ambition. It was my vision before that was too low. Quote. And now, if you want to make Alabasta famous in the future, I suggest that you can show Alabasta's attitude to Mr. Lucifer earlier. Only the sooner you seize this opportunity, Alabasta will be able to get bigger rewards in the future. Benefit. Vivi gave Crocodile a strange look and said curiously, "Why do I feel that the fourth rider, Lord Crocodile, seems to be particularly convinced of Lord Cypher now?" "You mean loyalty, right? The third rider, Princess Vivi." Crocodile directly debunked what Vivi wanted to express, and continued. "The tone of voice is loyalty, but in fact, I hope Mr. Lucifer will succeed. After all, after knowing the information of myriad realms, the so-called One Piece, the so-called Four Emperors, etc., in my eyes, it is like a cloud of smoke, and everything counts. Not up. My goal now is to help Mr. Lucifer succeed as soon as possible, and then follow in his footsteps, step into the heavens and the world, and see the scenery of different worlds." After listening to Crocodile's words, Vivi's eyes also glowed with brilliance, and then he seemed to have made up his mind secretly before turning his head to look at Crocodile, and said seriously, "Fourth Rider Crocodile, Your Excellency, please teach ninjutsu to all the king's army throughout Alabasta." Hearing this, Crocodile turned his head and looked at Vivi. "Have you decided?" Vivi nodded solemnly and said, "Yes, I have already decided. Now that I have joined the Dark Moon Knights, why not directly confront the world government?" Seeing the determination in Vivi's eyes, Crocodile's eyes flashed with admiration, and then said, "Since this is the case, then on the basis of the original plan, it is not a big deal to help you train the king's army. Also, Baroque workers, I will hand it over to you in the future. Let me see how far you can go with Alabasta, the third rider, Princess Vivi." The next day, 3 consecutive messages from Alabasta directly shook the entire sea. Alabasta announced its withdrawal from the world government. Also, the Princess of Alabasta, Neferutari, and Vivi have become the third rider in the Dark Moon 12 riders that made a lot of noise some time ago. More than that, even Crocodile, the sand crocodile who temporarily lives in Alabasta, has announced to give up the title of 7 warlords of the sea. Most importantly, he has become the fourth rider. Incredible. Simply incredible. What on earth did King Cobra of Alabastan think? Did he directly choose to stand on Lucifer Zanyu's side and resist the world government? Who knows what to think? Maybe it's old and confused. By the way, does any of you know this Princess Vivi? Is she also a very powerful character? Why haven't I heard of it before? I know that Princess Vivi is just an ordinary little girl. That shouldn't be right. Judging from the strength standard of the first rider that appeared before the Dark Moon occasionally ride, organization and the monster that appeared in the second rider, if it didn't reach this level, Lucifer Zanyu probably wouldn't accept her. Become the third rider. Maybe Lucifer has the means to make one's strength rise to the sky, ahahaha. For the 3 pieces of news that shocked the world from Alabasta, everyone's comments were mixed, but what caught everyone's attention the most was whether the third rider, Princess Vivi, could match the strength of the first 2 riders. As for the decision of the fourth rider Crocodile, although everyone disagreed, but after all, he was a big pirate who had already become famous on the sea. Except for those who knew about Crocodile's strength before, the rest of the people were not very surprised. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.